one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Monday, the 12th of July. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, partly cloudy, 19 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. It is a scene that has not played out in Toronto in more than a decade. A procession and funeral for a police officer killed in the line of duty. Constable Geoffrey Northrop will be honored this afternoon. Our Alex Bloomfield has more on the preparations.
Police officers and other first responders will begin lining up on the lakeshore soon. Some minor roads already being shut down in the area. Among the participants, units from Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, and Quebec City. A procession to begin around 10:30 this morning, led by police bands and the chief's ceremonial unit. The public invited to line the route along the lakeshore between Ontario Drive and Canada Boulevard. The casket carrying Detective Constable Geoffrey Northrop will leave a Thornhill funeral home later this morning. Police not releasing that exact route from Thornhill to the lakeshore. There will be a police escort, but the main viewing area, they stress, will be down at the lakeshore. Jeff's police partner will carry his hat in front of the pallbearers when the casket arrives. Officers will line Princess Boulevard on both sides as it arrives at the exhibition grounds. The service, it will begin at 1 o'clock. Premier Ford, Mayor Tory, Chief Raymer, all to deliver tributes, and Constable Northrop's wife, Margaret, will deliver the eulogy. The 55-year-old, 31-year veteran of the force and father of 3 was killed on July 2nd while responding to a robbery report in the City Hall parking garage. He was hit by a vehicle. Police say that was deliberate. I'm Alex Bloomfield.
City News Time 9:01. The federal government expects to receive 3.7 million more doses of COVID-19 vaccines this week as Canada inches closer to hitting the same percentage of fully vaccinated people as in the U.S. To date, around 42.7% of eligible Canadian residents have received 2 doses of COVID-19 vaccine, giving them full protection against the virus. The federal government expects another 1.4 million doses of the shot from Pfizer to arrive in the next 7 days. It also plans to distribute the 1.5 million doses from Moderna that came in last Friday. An update is expected in the next day or two about the fast-moving wildfire that scorched virtually the entire village of Lytton, BC. The fire, June 30th, threatened the community so quickly, residents were only given minutes to flee with little more than the clothes on their backs. RCMP say multiple agencies, including the Transportation Safety Board, are helping to investigate the cause of the inferno. Some residents have suggested a passing train could have sparked the fire, given the record-setting heat wave and tinder dry conditions. Europe's soccer champions have returned home to the ecstatic cheers of Italians. The team's captain and coach hoisting the trophy high over their heads. They descended from a charter plane at Rome's airport earlier today. The team was to be celebrated officially later on today by Italy's president and prime minister. Many Italians spent the night honking horns, as did Canadian fans in Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, some here in Ottawa too, celebrating Italy's 3-2 win on penalties over England. The Calgary Stampede will welcome visitors for a 4th day today and says it is putting the frontline workers at the front of the line. The Stampede is offering free admission until tomorrow for all frontline and essential workers as well as their guests. The VIPs include first responders, healthcare workers, teachers, retail, grocery, and warehouse workers. Safety measures at the Stampede this year include cutting daily attendance in half. Time now for a check of the forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Sun and cloud and a slight chance of some showers as we work through the day. The high 29 will feel like 33. Showers overnight, 19 for the low, and tomorrow and for Wednesday. Showers, scattered thunderstorms, highs about 27. For today, the high 29.
19 right now under a partly cloudy sky in Ottawa and Smiths Falls. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Separating headlines
from hearsay.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Yep, back to work, back to reality. Back to getting into the news. Gathering your views on the Rob Snow Show on City News. Hope you had a great weekend. Oh, they don't come much better than that, do they? Unless you're in England, I suppose, where productivity is probably at an all-time low today. One of the things we're going to dig deep into this morning is the whole idea of needing a vaccine passport. You know, the province of Quebec is going to go down this road of a vaccine passport. And I guess the idea is simple enough. If you're not fully vaccinated, there will be consequences. There will be things that you won't be allowed to do in the province of Quebec. I guess you could say that your freedoms will be curtailed, restricted. Government says you won't be denied government services. You'll still be able to go to a hospital, I suppose, or renew your driver's license or something like that. It's more about day-to-day life, commerce, I guess you could say. You might not be able to go to a bar or a restaurant or go work out in a gym or go to a concert without a vaccine passport. Proof. They will demand proof. No proof, no service. But when you stop and think about it for a moment, I mean, what are we talking about here? We're talking about someone's personal health record, right? Someone's health status, I guess you could say, for all intents and purposes. And I think it's important to follow what they come up with in Quebec, because I doubt the province of Quebec will be the only place that tries to do it. Maybe they'll do the same thing here in Ottawa. I mean, if you need a vaccine passport to cross the river and buy something, maybe the Ottawa side of the river should have the same kind of thing in the name of continuity. But again, we're talking about somebody's health status. Well, actually, potentially the health status of millions of people, maybe even tens of millions of people. And it seems we could have this situation where we have government saying to business, it's okay, go ahead and ask people about their health status. You would think normally that would be a no-go. You could make a very good case. There is nothing more personal. There is nothing more private than your health status. What you tell your doctor. You wouldn't ask someone, have you had a disease? Have you ever been treated for this, that, or the other thing? You wouldn't ask someone, have you ever had cancer? Have you ever been treated for cancer? What about HIV? You name it, right? None of your business. It's off limits. Is it the same to ask people, have you been fully vaccinated against COVID-19? That's why we have to ask the question. I know it might seem like the next logical step because everybody wants things to get back to normal. We want restaurants and bars and cafes and movie theaters and festivals and all of it to get back to normal. And we want everyone to be as safe as possible. And maybe this is unavoidable, a vaccine passport, if that is the ultimate goal. But I do think it's something that deserves an airing, if you will. A look at the potential pitfalls and benefits, and whether it could be the top of a slippery slope. The government wants to let private enterprise know about someone's vaccine status. What else does the government want to share about people? Who is collecting this data? Where is this data being stored? Is it being shared? How long will this data be on file? All of these things. Shouldn't we take a good long look at this so we don't have some regrets later on? So, with that in mind, we'll have some experts on the program. We will speak with a bioethicist, a clinical ethicist from the University of Toronto, Dr. Kerry Bowman. And we'll talk about the law with a lawyer. Imagine that. From Torys, Molly Reynolds. And I want to talk to you about this issue as well during the Talkback Hour. We do that every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock around here, an hour of opinions, an hour of phone calls, debate, discussion about the hot issues of the day. This is a hot issue on this day. I keep hearing about herd immunity. And this number, 90%. Heard that in the news last week here locally. 90%. That's a target I keep hearing about in the news. 90%. We need 90% of our population fully vaccinated. And then we can boast that we have achieved herd immunity. And really, then and only then will life truly get back to normal. And we can pretty much say goodbye to COVID-19 once and for all. Dr. Vera Etches, our medical officer of health here in Ottawa, said last week we won't be able to end the Ottawa mask bylaw, lift that bylaw, until 90% of the population is fully vaccinated. And that's why she said, yeah, sure, mask bylaws and mask mandates are coming to an end elsewhere. Calgary, Edmonton, the province of British Columbia, most of the United States. Meantime, here in Ottawa, ours is likely to remain in place until August 26th. It's supposed to stay in place until August 26th. Now, we interviewed the head of the City of Ottawa's vaccination program last week, Anthony DeMonte, and he told us, well, actually, we're on track. We're doing pretty well. We're on track to hit that 90% number sometime in the middle of August. But it's no sure thing because there are some people, they haven't even had a first shot yet. The Globe and Mail editorial over the weekend raised the idea of Canada never getting to 90%, never achieving herd immunity, because the data is now starting to suggest that when it comes to the pace of vaccination, Canada has plateaued, really struggling to hit 80% who've had a first shot. In other words, and we saw this in the United States as well, you're hitting resistance. You're hitting resistance. And who is resistant? The hesitant, and the outright hardcore anti-vaxxers. And it's this idea that there could be a percentage of the population that just refuses to get vaccinated. So, since we're going to be talking about the ethical and legal implications of vaccine passports, I want to ask you, what should happen, if anything, what should happen to people who just refuse to get vaccinated? Nothing? Nothing? Should people who refuse to get vaccinated, should they be able to do everything that a fully vaccinated person can do? Travel wherever they want to travel, shop where they ever want to shop, dine in a restaurant, apply for jobs, keep their jobs. You name it. I mean, it's an endless list of examples that you could come up with. Should there be no consequence for refusing to get vaccinated, or should the unvaccinated be allowed to do whatever a fully vaccinated person can do? The biggest consequence could be, it seems, at least Quebec is going down this road, you won't be allowed to fully participate in society the same way a fully vaccinated person can participate in society. So what do you think about that? Okay, we're going to get into this during the Talkback Hour this morning. We do the Talkback Hour every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock. It's important that you share your opinions. You just call 750-1310 and you offer an opinion straight up. Should there be consequences for not getting vaccinated against COVID-19? Maybe you don't go back to work. Maybe you don't keep your job. Maybe you can't travel. Maybe you can't go into that store that you used to go into. Maybe you can't go into that restaurant that you used to go into. Should there be consequences for refusing to get vaccinated? I'm going to get into that this morning in a big, big way. Vaccine passports, the vaccine hesitant, and freedom from COVID-19. This morning on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Ottawa Markets was created by the City of Ottawa to help rejuvenate the outdoor markets program in Byward and Wellington West, where we have the Parkdale Market. And so we set to work on bringing in the right team with the right experience and reaching out to local vendors and local farmers, because we knew when we did a survey of our customers that was the one thing that was really important to them, both at Byward and in Parkdale, is to start bringing back that local product. And that's what you can see behind us here at the York Street Farmers Market. We put in place a Farmers First policy, which means that we will deal with farmers from the region first. And we're going to give them priority in terms of placement. They're going to have reduced fees in coming to the market. We've also made it free for any farm that's been in operation for under 2 years. The market also put in place a BIPOC initiative, which is a Black, Indigenous, and Peoples of Color initiative, which provides grants and support opportunities for folks from those communities to come on out to the market to reduce systemic barriers that have existed. As a farmer's market, we can have a variety of vendors here, from an artisan to a microprocessor who's taking local ingredients and putting them into a product in a kitchen and selling that, to breweries and distilleries this year, which were changes that the province put in place, which allowed us to bring in a few of those vendors as well, which I think is a nice surprise for people sometimes at 9 in the morning after a pandemic, but it's been going really well, and you know, some of the breweries have been pretty appreciative, because for them, whether it just be doing delivery or curbside pickup, it gives them an opportunity to come back out and talk with their customer and talk about, you know, what makes their product so special. Throughout the market, the health and safety protocols that you're going to see, masks are still required. That is obviously the case, and you'll see a number of signs noting that around the area. We've got a number of hand sanitizer units, I call them droids, throughout the area that you can sort of just grab a pump or a squeeze wherever you go. But what we've also had to do is reduce the number of vendor spaces we have in the market by 50%. This ensures that we can guarantee that our vendors are going to have that distance, that we can, you know, have a little bit better flow around the market. But what we also did was, as I said, we created the York Street Farmers Market, which is just microprocessors and local producers only, and that's on Saturdays. In Parkdale, we launched the night market, which is bringing a lot of the same content, but in the evening, and residents are sort of spilling out into the park. So we're looking at what we're doing as trying to support, create, and enhance public space for the residents of the city. It's been great, you know, the community, which is what this market is here for, and then as tourism comes back, obviously we'll welcome all visitors. But the response has been really great. The community's come on out, they're speaking with their wallets and their dollars, which obviously at the end of the day, we want a great experience, but it needs to be a valuable economic opportunity for the vendors who are coming out.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So as promised, we're launching right into a heavy-duty topic this morning, and the Quebec government's idea of introducing a vaccine passport, likely in September. We have on the line a clinical bioethicist from the University of Toronto, Kerry Bowman. Good morning.
Good morning.
What is your initial reaction to this idea?
Well, you know, I'm not sure we're going to need it. You know, would it be helpful? Maybe. You know, mass vaccination is still going very, very well in Canada. And, you know, I'm speaking of Quebec now. You know, I think the motivation is that it's the younger cohort that tends to taper off the most in terms of vaccines, at least for now, you know, meaning, 18 to 30 or so. So I think by using the language of gyms and bars, and, you know, I'm being a little stereotypical here, but you know, it's kind of a nudge to move more people along with vaccination. But look, you know, the day could come, God forbid, if there's a horrible fourth wave and we need every tool we can get, that we may have to consider something like this, but I don't think we're there yet. And I see lots of ethical problems with it. So
with the kind of the messaging right now, you think the Quebec government might be using kind of a carrot stick approach then? Is that what you're saying?
That's my guess.
Yeah,
this is just my opinion, but I do think that. I think they're trying to nudge people along. And, you know, what do I think of that? Well, I don't know. I think people really should be vaccinated as an act of free will, that they really want to do this, either for their personal health, but their families, but also the community. You know, there's a lot of concern with vaccine passports. You know, in this difficult world we live in, do we really need one more thing that's going to divide people? it does create some limits in terms of freedom of movement. And we don't think about that much because we've always had it. But, that's part of our freedoms. Look, there could easily be an element of surveillance to it as well. So I think it has to be proportional. So if we go into a horrible fourth wave crisis situation, I don't think that's going to happen, by the way, for what it's worth. That's my two thoughts. Okay. But, it may be justifiable. But I just don't think we're there yet. And I also think, I'm being optimistic here, if vaccinations go really, really, really well, globally, that's a whole other problem. Things are going terribly. But we may not need this.
Okay. So you're worried, first of all, that there are civil liberties issues here, like charter rights, right? Freedom of movement, these kinds of things. What else are you worried about?
Well,
from an ethical point of view.
From an ethical point of view, I would worry about surveillance. And that sort of ties somewhat to freedom of movement. That if you go out on a Friday night and you need a vaccine passport for, I don't know what, you go for a glass of wine here and dinner there. That your movements are being, that are under surveillance. Now, that may not be the intention of vaccine passports at all, but look at the amount of hacking that goes on. And I'm not an expert on hacking, but, our banks, our, credit card companies keep telling us how safe everything is. And read the news. People get hacked all the time.
Sure.
So, and it's kind of an arms race with hacking. So, and there will be some medical information on it. I don't know how much. I don't think a lot, but certainly, I'm guessing your age, maybe some issues of medical status. And then, with vaccine you have, which is also contentious, by the way. I just don't think it's divisive. I mean, Manitoba's doing something similar, and now you've got, huge demand. I worry that the demand is people are afraid if they don't have it, their lives are going to be restricted. Okay. I don't know that, but that's what I worry about. So I just don't think we're there yet.
Right. So there's a lot that we don't know. Yeah. You've admitted there's a lot that you don't know. So what would you like to know before you would sign off on some kind of vaccine passport?
That we're in a crisis. Now, of course, we are in a crisis. And we've been in one for a very long time, and we're awfully used to it, and it's also a global crisis. What I'd want to see is that we have a fourth wave. What I'd want to see, doesn't that sound awful? You know what I mean, though?
Yes, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Nobody wants a fourth wave. I understand that, Professor.
No, we really don't.
Yeah.
And that, that vaccine passports may work. I would want to hear that, unfortunately, with the variants, they're just not fully effective, and we've got this percentage of people. Like, we don't even know yet as Canadians where we're going to plateau. I think we're going to plateau much higher than the United States and Britain and some other countries. When I say plateau, what I mean is the amount of people that receive 2 vaccine doses. I live in downtown Toronto. We're at 60%. My neighborhood's even higher that I live in terms of doubly vaccinated. And, it's only mid-July. So things may be a lot better very soon.
Yeah, maybe that's why the Quebec government, again, going back to the messaging as well, September, if we're not there by September, we may have to do this. Maybe you're right on that. But I want to get to this idea of it being... I want to know if you view it this way, that someone's vaccination status is, and asking about that, isn't that the same as asking someone an intimate question about their health status? Is that how you view it?
Well, it is. I mean, your vaccination status is health status. There's no question about that. And also vaccination status is for some people and many of us actually quite emotional because people have very strong feelings about it. I mean, you may have observed, as I have, that most people that you interact with can't tell you fast enough how vaccinated they are and what they got and how they felt and did I have a sore arm? That's most people. It's not everybody.
No.
And remember, there's some people that we all know that can't be vaccinated. There's some people that just, they've got their own anxieties and you could call them vaccine hesitant, but some people are just really, really anxious about medical things and, they may even want to be vaccinated and they're just too fearful. Like, who knows? And it is medical information. And, vaccine passports put you in this position. And I'm also thinking of the doormen in these sports venues and bars and restaurants. And, imagine the harangue. And you show up with, a couple of your children, and one of them's under 12. They can't come in. Like, how's that going to work?
Right.
But
it's also, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I find this part of the whole discussion very curious. You wouldn't ask, for example, let's say this is being used to board an airplane or something. You wouldn't ask someone if they had ever been treated for a disease or undergoing some kind of therapy for a disease, for example, or something like that, like cancer or something like that. It's totally, inappropriate and unethical, right? These are private, intimate details, and that's why, what happens between me and my doctor is private, intimate, not to be shared. So is it really appropriate to be asking people, not only asking people, but collecting data and, essentially sharing it all over the place about who's been vaccinated and who hasn't been vaccinated? Yeah. These are my concerns.
Well, no, and they're fair concerns. I mean, what's different, whether, if I had ever had cancer, what's different with that than this is, whether I had ever had cancer doesn't have any effect whatsoever on the health and well-being of anyone else.
Okay.
Whereas vaccination status does, right? So that's the argument that, it removes it from us and puts it somewhere else. But, when you mention airlines, I mean, if we start talking internationally, it is going to happen. There's it meaning vaccine passports, it is going to happen. There's no question about it. There's lots of problems with that, too. And it's the international, I'm doubly vaccinated with AstraZeneca. I work in many low-income countries in both Africa and Latin America. And, I may not be able to enter, even though I have a totally approved vaccine, because, other countries may not support AstraZeneca or something like that. Yeah. And, this is not evidence-based. And this is what vaccine passports do, is they create these kinds of divisions amongst people that are going to be very difficult.
Do you want assurances about the data as well?
I would, but the whole thing with this pandemic is we the best we can do is the data we have at this time. Okay. And when I look at vaccine passports, what is September going to? I'm not an epidemiologist. I'll stay out of that. I'm a bioethicist. But when I look at what September of 2021 is going to look like, I don't know, and I'm not sure anyone fully knows. So far it's looking pretty good for Canada. And so, I think it'd have to be looking really bad for us to justify vaccine passports. The other thing is what's emerging is it looks like different provinces are going to do different things. And, so it may be quite a hodgepodge of things going on around the country. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, nice
Anytime.
to hear from you. Yeah, that's a bioethicist from the University of Toronto, Kerry, Bowman. 9:30 News is coming up. This is the Rob Snow Show, Monday on City News.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Monday, the 12th of July. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, partly cloudy, 21 degrees. Here's what's making news this hour. They're already gathering in Toronto to pay tribute to a police officer killed in the line of duty. The funeral for Constable Geoffrey Northrup will be held this afternoon at a soccer stadium near the city's waterfront. Northrup died after being struck by a car in a parking garage. A 31-year-old man has been charged with first-degree murder. Ottawa leads the province when it comes to 12 to 17-year-olds getting vaccinated against COVID-19. 78% of the capital's teens have had at least one dose of the vaccine, compared with 60% of 12 to 17-year-olds across Ontario. A Canada-wide arrest warrant issued for a suspect in last week's murder in Lower Town. 26-year-old Habi Farhan Aden of Ottawa is wanted for second-degree murder in the July 5th shooting of Tyson Dongozi. Smiths Falls police asking for your help to find a missing Florida woman who's been staying in town with family. Police say Judith McPhee was last seen at a home on Abel Street in Smiths Falls Saturday night. She's driving a brown 2019 Nissan Murano with a Florida license plate. Anyone who sees her vehicle is asked to contact Smiths Falls Police. City News Time, 9:31. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Pfizer and its partner, BioNTech, are going to pursue American and European regulatory approval for a third dose of their COVID-19 vaccine, citing the spread of variants and data that they say shows diminished vaccine potency 6 months after the initial shots. Now, yesterday, the health ministry in Israel announced that it would begin offering booster shots to adults with weakened immune systems who already had 2 doses of the vaccine because of a spike in cases there. So, will we need a third shot? Dr. Sumon Chakrabarti is back with us. He's an infectious disease specialist at Trillium Health Partners in Mississauga. Good morning.
Good morning.
What is your reaction to the news that Pfizer is seeking regulatory approval for a third COVID-19 vaccine dose?
I think looking at this kind of fairly, at some point, this is certainly something that needs to be thought of. It needs to be thought of, especially in the proper populations. I do think, though, that the message for this and the kind of urgency that Pfizer seems to be pushing this forward is premature to me. I don't think it's something that we necessarily need to be doing on a broad scale right now as a priority against, for example, getting the rest of the world vaccinated, especially the developed world. But certainly this is a question that we need to answer, and it might be applicable to certain populations earlier than the general population at large.
So before we start talking about third shots, let's talk about half the planet that has yet to get one, for example.
That's exactly right. This is a global pandemic, and getting it under control around the world is going to affect all of us in a positive way.
Yeah, and we keep hearing that, right? That it is a global pandemic, and until the entirety of the global population has had some sort of immunization, it's not going anywhere. So
that's exactly right, and I think that it's important at some point that we have to change our perspective. Obviously, we want to do whatever we can to keep people healthy, keep them out of the hospital, but eliminating this thing is not going to happen. So we have to now kind of shift to doing whatever we can to get people vaccinated, and also go to these hotspot areas in different communities that we're able to kind of when there have outbreaks, especially among unvaccinated, do things we can do to help that.
Okay, but when it comes, generally speaking, in medicine, when it comes to diseases that can be prevented with a vaccine, how unusual is it to need, say, a third shot, a third booster shot?
Booster shots are certainly things that we do in medicine for certain vaccines. I'll give you an example: measles, mumps, rubella, because we do see that vaccination can wane after several years. So that's not unusual at all. The timing of that, of course, needs to be considered. That needs to be optimized. And I do totally see that there's an argument for people who have profound immune suppression, maybe hematologic or blood cancers, people who have transplants, just to name a few. So this is a situation that I can see. Yeah, we might need to give them a booster shot earlier. The general population may also need a booster shot at some point. I just don't think it needs to be right now. I think that we have some time to wait, maybe in a year or two, depending on the overall behavior of the virus. But that's something that's part of the reason we have to keep an eye on things and the trends that happen over the next several months to a couple of years.
Yeah, when I read this story, I was thinking, I wonder if we are on our way to this becoming an annual thing. What do you think? Like the flu shot. And maybe it's a better targeted vaccine that offers better protection eventually as the science evolves against all these variants. What do you think, Doctor?
This is a tough one. So, This is an area where, virologists and epidemiologists are much more qualified to answer. But in my discussions with them, the way that coronaviruses act, they don't change as quickly as, say, influenza does from season to season. It seems that way right now just because there's so much of SARS-CoV-2 around. But overall, it doesn't mutate as quickly. So the prediction, obviously, that could change as time goes on. But the general prediction is likely it's not going to be yearly. It might be every couple of years. Some point a booster will likely be needed, but again, this is not going to be necessarily the same thing as influenza.
Okay. What's your sense of how the vaccine program is going right now in Canada, in Ontario? What's your sense of it?
I think looking at this right now, we really, really have to kind of stand back and just, marvel at how amazing it's been over the past, especially 2 months. I'm not kind of forgetting how it was a slow start. There was supply issues initially, and where the vaccines were going to go. But right now, it really is of the best, if not the best in the world. And we're sitting in a really, really good spot right now with almost 80% of eligible adults, people over the age of, eligible people over the age of 12, vaccinated. And that is something that really shouldn't be taken lightly because it really has changed the face of the disease at the current time, fundamentally.
Okay. Herd immunity, 90%. Hearing this a lot in the news media now. We have to hit 90%. Do you think 90% is possible or impossible, hitting 90%?
This obviously is a bit of a complicated question. So first of all, from a vaccine standpoint, getting 90%, I don't think is going to happen. I think that, even right now, seeing what we have, almost 80% is huge, considering that, a lot of vaccine campaigns, like influenza, for example, often will stop at 30. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have to think about that.
Exactly, yeah.
The second thing that I really also think is important is that natural immunity does play a role. And I think that we have to remember, especially in hard-hit communities, for example, where I am in Peel, Mississauga, Toronto area, there's a lot of people who are affected by disease as well. So this also kind of plays into the whole equation. I don't think we're going to eliminate this thing anytime soon. So there's going to be ongoing transmission, especially among unvaccinated individuals. And we're going to have to grapple with that going forward and give more targeted measures to help to control that.
How surprised are you that there seems to be, if there's a weak demographic, it seems to be the younger demographic, 18 to 29 years old. I'm not sure if, remembering back to when I was between the ages of 18 and 29 years old, I suppose there's a certain sense of invincibility that comes along with being so young and vigorous, Doctor. But what do you think? What could explain that? What do you think?
These are things that actually we're learning more and more. So on one hand, there is that sense. I remember that sense myself. But I think the other thing to remember is that people in that age group are also much more likely to have close contact with each other, in larger groups, being indoors, all those types of things. There's a lot of dynamics involved. Yeah. We also have to remember, though, that just because we have cases going up in that group, which we are seeing in multiple parts of the world, this is also a group that has of the lowest risk of long-term, long-term, yes, but also lowest risk of severe complications, right? The other thing is that we saw before that
if I get it, I'm not going to end up in the hospital. I'll be fine. I'm young, right? So yeah, okay.
That's true. But the other thing to remember is that we also worried because when a teenager would bring it home to say grandpa, grandma, but now we have grandpa and grandma, for the most part, vaccinated and protected, right? So it's a different dynamic now. I still do think at some point it's important for transmission's sake to vaccinate this population, but let's look at the overall risk. We're certainly much different position than we were even 4 months ago.
Yeah. What do you think is the big risk right now with COVID-19? What are the biggest risks right now?
I would say at the current time, in the next couple of months, what we're going to be grappling with is we're going to see localized outbreaks. There's no doubt about that. And it's likely going to be in people who are unvaccinated or partially vaccinated. And, this is it's going to tend to happen in the places we saw with Alpha as well, in congregate work and living settings. And we will probably see some breakthrough infections as well, but they will be very, very small in comparison. So one thing I do want to really, really stress is just because we see these, this does not automatically mean we need to go into lockdown. I think what's important now, we have the opportunity, because things are much different, to look at the determinants of what is driving these cases in different communities. So I'll give you one big one in Peel. It was the occupational to household transmission chain, and what we could do to target that chain and help interrupt that. It's going to be different from community to community, but we can now do that at the healthcare, public health level, as opposed to a blanket lockdown like we've been seeing for the past year and a half.
Yeah, this is very interesting. So much of the focus is on vaccines, which is good. And, the pace of vaccination has really ramped up, and that's good as well. The numbers appear good there. It's overshadowed testing, though. We used to talk a lot about testing. We need to test people so we can identify where potential outbreaks are. Do you think there's still is there still a great benefit to doing a lot of testing for COVID-19 right now?
I think the answer to that, so it depends on where you're doing it. So I think doing testing that's more targeted, for example, again, high-risk settings, healthcare, of course, certain work settings, and you still want to have some type of surveillance of what's happening in the community. But the way we were doing it last year, it's just anybody, if you have a runny nose and you're not very risk of giving it to anybody else, knowing about that is not as important anymore. So testing is still important, but the fundamental way we do it and where we direct it has now changed, and that's what I think is important going forward. I don't really think it's as important to know if there's 50 people with a runny nose in the community, who are just, for example, working outdoors, for example. But if we have 50 people who work in a factory where other people you can have a large outbreak, and there's a lot of unvaccinated individuals, that is different. And that's where I think the change will lie. And it's just a fundamental change in perspective and direction now that we have a major vaccine coverage.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. Always so great to have your advice and your expertise. Thank you again.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
Take
Dr.
care.
Sumon Chakrabarti, infectious disease specialist, Trillium Health Partners in Mississauga. Barry McLoughlin, senior partner, TransformLeaders.ca, coming up next. His weekly appearance on the Rob Snow Show here on City News.
Papa Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store, a popcorn machine was in there. He didn't want it. I ended up by buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the heck for? I won't use exact words. But anyway, we started, and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself. And to see our brand name, Papa Jack, and Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa, and then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques, but in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa, Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, the factory's in the back. If you come into the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number, And with that code number, they tell their friends or their neighbors, everybody, to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people who have supported us and support local businesses. Sometimes people, they talk about buying locally. Now it becomes that much more important to buy locally, to support your local businesses, because not too many of them are going to survive this. We're fortunate that we're so far so good.
Fun
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Barry McLoughlin is here now for his weekly appearance on the Rob Snow Show on City News. He's a senior partner at TransformLeaders.ca. He's spent over 3 decades coaching political leaders, executives, CEOs in media, crisis communication, leadership communications. He's a fellow at Carleton's Masters of Political Management, adjunct professor in the Shannon School of Business at Cape Breton University. He's a busy, busy guy. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. I'm recovering from the celebration down on Preston Street in Little Italy last night. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that'd be a heck of a party, I would imagine, on
really
Preston
was.
Street yesterday.
And it was loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was exciting, though. It was a fun game. It was fun to watch,
It
and
really was, and I was kind of torn. Of course, I didn't really have a pony in this race.
No, me either. No.
As it went along, though, you got pretty excited for Italy, and a little disappointing. I mean, of course, a great disappointment for British fans, because I think the expectation was they would win. It looked like they came out really strong, and then it just kind of didn't quite have, I think, the real passion in their heart that the Italians seemed to have, and it was just an amazing. Well, to go all the way through into the penalty kickoffs and everything else, that was quite something.
Yeah. They scored so early. The UK scored really early. England, I should say. England.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Scotland was there and Wales was there at the beginning, right? So England, let's be specific here. They scored 2 minutes in, and then it was to me, it was sort of, okay, let's see if we can hang on to this. But,
that's right.
I'm watching it not because I even know a lot about soccer or follow it to any great degree. And like you said, no pony in the race, right? So... but I'm in it for the spectacle. It's 60,000 people in the stands, and just looking at an event from what's kind of become known, Barry, as the before times. Like, it's just like, wow. Like, looks like everything's back to normal there.
Yeah, and they actually, limited capacity to something like 56,000 or something, but people still broke through the barriers to get in. So there was a lot of drama behind the scenes as well.
Yeah. So let's get into some of the other interesting things that have been going on. What do you think of this billionaire space race? Richard Branson did his thing yesterday, and it looked flawless. The broadcast, I watched it all from beginning to end. I wanted to see how this thing went, and it wasn't the best live stream experience I've ever had.
Right.
But nevertheless, did what he was supposed to do, go up, go down. And what did you think of it?
Well, I think you used the word billionaires. It kind of took over the basic narrative, the battle of the billionaires. You look at the news this morning, the billionaires, and he and Bezos, and of course Elon Musk is part of all this. Mm-hmm. So that kind of, I think, overrides the more important narrative, and that is opening up space, especially to, non-government, non-NASA, non-military, more civilian. And I think in this case, Branson, I read a biography of him in great depth, and he is somebody that these kind of PR events are really, it's just part of his DNA. He's done it from the earliest times, and he is so comfortable. It's all about him to a great extent. He tends to override actually what's going on. But you know what? You got to give him his credit. He put a lot lot of resources, time, and effort into this. It was quite something else to see. He has a very interesting concept. I'm not sure how durable it is over time. These small craft coming up, 4 or 6 people in with a little rocket-powered flight. It's interesting. I think the guy that really has a vision of it is Jeff Bezos with his Blue Origin. I've been following that over the years, and he has a complete vision of creating, circumnavigating the moon. Huge, big, in fact, a station, but it's much more than a station. It's like 100 kilometers long. There's going to be thousands of people living on board. It's going to be the base to build the South Polar moon base. They find it much cheaper and easier to actually build from there, and ultimately to go to Mars from there. So it's a complete, the Blue Origin vision is very, very all-encompassing. Unlike what this is not really, I think the Branson thing is not the same vision.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of the Branson thing, and is there a better kind of business showman? You and I have talked about brands in the past. I mean, he is, he has built himself quite a brand there.
Absolutely,
and now
everything. His value is putting his name attached to it. He often doesn't put all of his money in it. He gets other investors.
Yeah.
He leverages his name very, very well.
Yeah. I think his business, based on what I've been hearing over the last day or so, is, it's a ride. Give me your $250. I'll take you up into space.
$250,000.
Yeah, $250,000. Yeah, not $250. No. That would be enough, right?
I'll go for that.
Right? Yeah. At least we can get into Disney World for $250. But I will take you up into space for $250,000.
Yeah.
But as with the Bezos Blue Origin thing, it's more of like a space transportation company. We're going to carry cargo. We're going to carry people. And in fact, with Blue Origin, there's an Ottawa angle there because he wants to get involved with this the same kind of internet by satellite business that Elon Musk is in, and Telesat is involved in that here in Ottawa in a big way. They're working with Blue Origin.
And the idea that, he has the reusable rockets, coming.
Yeah, reusable rockets.
These are really critically important because it would cost gazillions of dollars every time. It used to be, the rockets would basically implode and fall into the ocean. This has all changed now, and Elon Musk is onto that too. So I think the two of them have an overarching vision for space in the future. It is quite exciting. And I got to give credit, it was important to Branson to be first. To be second wouldn't have worked. So he jumped ahead by 9 days, and it worked for him. Wow, he got lots of coverage, and yes, he was at the center of it, but he really did accomplish something, and you got to give him full marks for that.
There is something off-putting about it that we're talking about. Well, with Musk and Bezos, two of the most wealthy people in the world. Branson is a billionaire, but not on the scale of Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, but still, we're not passing the hat for him or having a tag day. There is something about this that's, not content with ruling Earth. They want to have space, too,
Yeah, well, it's all about the next challenge, and they are billionaires, and these are toys for them to a great extent. I think Bezos is he's put a lot of his own money, not Amazon's money, into it. I should point that out, and but all came from Amazon. And basically, though, you are right, and I think the problem with the billionaire thing, as I say, it's the one off-putting thing for me. The billionaires boys club stuff, and I think that really is unfortunate. It's hard to overcome it, but it becomes it's in every headline, and I think that spoils what you want it to be about. And so not much can be done about it, unfortunately. But I guess when you're replacing government money, it's got to be billionaires' money. Otherwise, it just wouldn't be enough in there to do it.
Yep. Okay. What? In case you haven't heard, Barry, there might be an election in Canada.
Oh yeah.
What's it about? Other than that Mr. Trudeau can win, what's the election about?
That is such a good question, because the ballot question is everything.
Yeah.
What, in effect, when you go into the ballot booth, what question are you answering when you mark your ballot? Every political party hones in on what they want the ballot question to be and what they don't want it to be. And often, it's the voter that will decide it. It isn't decided yet. they probably know what they shouldn't make it about. I think that the Conservatives would make a mistake if they kind of relitigated, re-prosecuted the mistakes that were made in the whole pandemic response. I think that's probably an error, and I think they know it, and it's looking at yesterday and not tomorrow. People usually want them to cast their vote looking forward. What you and I mentioned last week was that, for Conservatives, it's really the economic questions that tend to be the ones that if there's a concern about the economy and if the Conservatives can position the right ballot question, like usually a common ballot question for Conservatives is, which party do you trust to lead the economy, to bring jobs and opportunity to our community? That's really what a ballot question is. And for Justin Trudeau, it's the Build Back Better. It's the green economy. He's put so much into green that he's got to put green into his ballot question. And if people don't care enough about that, guess what? They probably won't be drawn to him. But if they do care about it, if it's not just jobs and money and growth, if it's also a green economy, that's why the Build Back Better thing, Joe Biden's line, is going to can work for him. NDP's got to get in there. Who do you trust to, bring fairness and opportunity for all people in Canada? I mean, they've got to kind of get to that. I think the whole issue of there's been a lot of, quote, scandals and a lot of ethical issues in this last Parliament. And I think, it's interesting to see how that's played, because that can really have an effect if it takes hold, if they feel that the Trudeau brand has been truly tarnished by these ethical issues. The Conservatives have to find an opportunity to try to get in there and do something about it. Same with the NDP. So it's unknown yet what the ballot question is. I think you usually spend several months in the run-up trying to define and shape the ballot question. That's what they've got to do. Advertising is usually a really important part of planting the seed for that.
Okay. There may be an election in Nova Scotia as well, and that is why Premier Rankin came clean, so to speak, about his 2 previous DUI convictions. Somebody was going to blow the whistle on him, apparently. What do you think about how he handled that?
Well, there's a bit of a history of this in Nova Scotia. I remember Jane Purvis was a conservative, progressive conservative cabinet minister, education minister, as I recall, in John Ham's government. And she blurted out in a media interview that she had taken hard drugs earlier in her career as a journalist. And her political aide was in the interview, and she realized, oh my gosh. So they called up the Premier's office, told them what had happened, and she offered to resign right there. The Premier thanked her for telling him, and he stood by her, and she because she had come clean to him. She knew that the Premier had to hear it before the people of Nova Scotia. It saved her job. I think in this case, he came clean to his leader, he says. He came clean to his riding or association or whatever. He didn't come clean to the public,
Okay.
Which is quite a difference.
All right.
And I'm surprised that his leader didn't say, you know what, right now, you go out and tell the people. When he first entered into politics, he didn't do that. They kept that quiet. And so it wasn't a clean mea culpa by any stretch of the imagination. He did it before he was outed doing it, which, of course, was important to do. So it's certainly one key step he did right, but he tried to pretend that he'd already come clean, that this is old news. No, that wasn't true. That's not a true narrative.
Okay. Thank you, Barry McLoughlin. Always great to hear from you.
Thank you.
Talk
Rob,
soon.
my pleasure.
Yeah, from TransformLeaders.ca. That's Barry McLoughlin. The Talkback Hour is coming up next. We'll be talking about vaccine passports, what you can and can't do and should and shouldn't do and won't be able to do unless you've been vaccinated. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Monday, the 12th of July. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, partly cloudy, 21 degrees. It's 20 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Police officers from across the country are gathering in Toronto to lay to rest Constable Geoffrey Northrup, the police officer killed in the line of duty while responding to a robbery call. Our Caitlin Lee joins us with the details.
Thousands of police officers from 50 organizations, including Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, and Quebec City, have arrived and will be in attendance at this closed funeral at BMO Field at 1 o'clock. The Premier, Mayor John Tory, and Chief James Raymer all paying tribute. Northrup's wife, Margaret, delivering the eulogy. Constable Northrup was killed in the line of duty on July 2nd after police say he was deliberately struck by a vehicle while attempting to make an arrest. The 55-year-old spent 31 years on the force and is survived by his wife and 3 children. Toronto police praising Constable Northrup for his kindness, energy, and enthusiasm for work and life. I'm Caitlin Lee.
City News Time 10:02. Canadian officials expect to receive a total of more than 55 million COVID-19 vaccine doses, including the latest shipments from Pfizer and Moderna this week. To date, around 42.7% of eligible Canadian residents have received both doses of the COVID vaccine, giving them full protection. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention data tracker lists 48% of the American population as being fully immunized. Environment Canada has issued another round of heat warnings for parts of central and the southern interior of BC. They include the region where crews are still battling that massive fire that leveled the village of Lytton in BC. Heat warnings issued yesterday by the Weather Office call for above seasonal daytime temperatures of 33 to 38 Celsius and only moderately cooler conditions in the overnights. Warnings are expected to remain in effect until at least the middle of this week. British police are investigating social media posts targeting members of England's soccer team following their loss in the European Championship final. ABC's Tom Rivers explains.
Racial abuse was quickly on display on social media after 3 Black England players missed penalties in their shootout loss. Condemnation of such postings from many quarters here, from the Prime Minister to average citizens to former players like Gary Neville.
It's absolutely ridiculous in 2021 we're still talking about this, but we are.
England manager Gareth Southgate describes the abuse as unforgivable. London's mayor is calling on social media companies to do more to hold offenders to account. Tom Rivers, ABC News, London.
City News Time 10:03. It seems it pays to keep some games untouched. An unopened copy of Nintendo's Super Mario 64 has sold at auction for, get this, $1.56 million US. Heritage Auctions in Dallas said the 1996 video game sold yesterday to an undisclosed buyer, breaking its previous record price for the sale of a single video game. This sale follows an unopened copy of Nintendo's The Legend of Zelda, selling at auction Friday for $870,000. Now with the latest local weather forecast, here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, you may have some showers that roll through at times, but generally just varying amounts of sun and cloud. Today it's warm. The high 29 will feel like 33, 19 for the low, showers overnight. And for tomorrow and for Wednesday, scattered showers and thunderstorms with highs near 27. For today, the high 29.
20 degrees right now in Smiths Falls, 21 in Ottawa under a partly cloudy sky. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Should there be consequences for not getting vaccinated? Consequences. What do you think? Consequences for people who just refuse to be vaccinated against COVID-19. Should there be consequences for that? Namely, limits on freedom. Okay, how do you feel about that? That's what I want to know, and I'm keeping track here. Okay, 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. We're talking a lot about vaccine passports today. What about people who refuse to get vaccinated? Okay. Should there be a consequence for that? Limits on liberty. For example, not allowed to travel like a fully vaccinated person is allowed to travel. For example, not being allowed to go to work or being denied a job at a business. Yeah, we'd love to hire you, Rob, but you're not vaccinated. We'd love to have you on, but you're a crazy anti-vaxxer. No. Not being allowed to go into a restaurant. What do you think about that? Not being allowed to shop in your favorite store because you're not fully vaccinated, or book a hotel room or rent a car or whatever, right? Denial of service. Are you okay with that? 750-1310. 750-1310. Should there be consequences for people who refuse to be vaccinated? Or should the unvaccinated have all the same privileges of society as the fully vaccinated do? No shoes, no shirt, no service. Maybe it's no 2 doses, no service. What do you think? 750-1310. This is, I would suggest, as time goes on here, it's going to be a conversation that we're going to have quite often, I think. Can the unvaccinated participate in society post-pandemic to the same degree that people who are fully vaccinated can participate in society post-pandemic? And I'd like to know, let's get the conversation going now, where you come down on that. Vaccine passports, all of these things. Okay? No vaccine, no service. No vaccine, no service. Where are you on no vaccine? Sorry, no service. It's amazing how the conversation has evolved over the course of the pandemic, isn't it? My gosh, what a 16 months, it's 17 months it's been. No mask, no service. Now here we are, no vaccine, no service. No vaccine, no service. For example, say a restaurant has a sign at the entrance and it says, no proof of vaccination, you do not enter our dining room. Or you go to check into your hotel room and the clerk says, show me your vaccination status, please. Ticket counter at the airport, greeter at the Walmart. The examples are endless, right? Or should the unvaccinated just be allowed to carry on as though the pandemic never happened? COVID-19 didn't exist, and if it did, it's a big deal. And the vaccines are part of a global conspiracy by Bill Gates, George Soros, and dancing alien lizard people. And if the unvaccinated infect other people, put other people in harm's way, so be it. It's a free country. What do you think? Let's get right to it here. Jam-packed. Keith Lanark. Morning, Keith.
Good morning, Matt. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Should there be consequences for not getting vaccinated?
No, there shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be any?
Unfortunately, there will be. The wife and I have been married 48 years. We've never had a flu shot because we don't believe in this kind of stuff.
What do you mean you don't believe in it? What do you mean you don't believe in it?
I don't believe in putting a germ that's going to attack you or whatever.
Right. When you say you don't believe in the flu shot, it's kind of like saying you don't believe in gravity to me.
Well,
you believe in gravity, right, Keith? Right?
Well, yeah, it's kind of obvious.
Kind of obvious, right?
But we never believed in. We always
never believed it.
Healthy, we're lucky, but we realized that if we didn't get these shots, that just by the way they're talking and the direction they're going, they are going to enforce all kinds of stuff, like you were saying, hotel rooms, travel, and all that.
Yes, they are. So you've been vaccinated against COVID-19 then?
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Both shots, yeah.
Sounds like begrudgingly to me, though, right?
Well, I would rather not, but we did not so much for our health as for what's going to be coming down the pipe, I think.
You didn't do it for your health, you did it for your freedom. Is that what you're saying?
That's it. Okay. That's what I'm saying, yeah.
All right, Keith. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Keith. Okay, so he says no. He doesn't believe in it. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Should there be consequences for not getting vaccinated? Or should the unvaccinated be able to carry on with their daily lives the same way a fully vaccinated person can? Maggie in Ottawa, you're on City News.
Yes, good morning.
Hi, Maggie. Should there be consequences for not getting vaccinated?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Okay, why not?
First of all, you got to look at the facts. And whenever we look at science and facts, we need to look at how many people have actually died from the virus.
Right.
Okay, so just to give you an example, 2 people out of every 100,000 are dying from the virus. Just to put that in perspective.
Okay, well, who's dying now? Who's dying now?
Hang on a second.
No. You hang on a second. It's not the Maggie in Ottawa show. You hang on a second. Who's dying now? People who haven't had vaccines are dying right now, right?
That's not true.
Just about everybody else is safe, right?
First of all, you're treating people that have been unvaccinated like they're sick. There are so many people that are unvaccinated that are extremely healthy and believe that they have a healthy immune system and are doing what they can to stay strong and healthy.
Okay.
And they don't need a vax for that.
Okay. That's what you believe? You don't need have you been vaccinated?
I think that's a question that's none of your business.
None of my business. Okay,
no.
Fair enough, Maggie.
We're all going around.
Lisa in Ottawa, should there be consequences for not getting vaccinated?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Holy cow. Okay. Why is that, Lisa?
Because we all should have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they're bribing people and threatening people in January, Justin Trudeau said there may be a possibility that there was going to be a vaccine available for those who chose to have it in the fall. And now all of a sudden we're being told that we might have to absolutely have it to be able to have freedom. There's something very, very underlyingly diabolical here.
Conspiracy. You think there's a conspiracy happening?
Absolutely. If you look at the VAERS report that I believe has now been pulled, the U.S. has reported about 7,000 deaths. The VAERS report.
The what?
The VAERS report for the vaccination injuries. There's something called the VAERS report in the U.S.
VAERS.
And it's only 1 to 10% that are being reported. And the last report was about 7,000 deaths.
7,000 deaths.
15,000 deaths in Europe.
Oh, so you're saying that the true global death toll is what, greatly exaggerated, you mean, from COVID-19? Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't. Okay. I believe that the doctors are being told. There's doctors that are actually losing their licenses in Canada. There's a list of doctors who've had to give up their practices because they're being told they cannot treat their patients with what they feel that COVID is easily treatable, but they're being told they cannot treat it. And that's why these people are dying, because doctors are not allowed. The government has gotten involved.
The government
with the way
has
the
gotten
doctors
involved.
Yes.
The government is telling family physicians you can't treat someone with COVID. Really?
Go on some of these.
Okay, it's honest to goodness, Lisa, I have honestly never heard of that before.
I know you haven't. That's the sad part, is so many people aren't looking into this. They're going ahead and getting the vaccination, which is not a vaccination, without doing your research. Okay. If you looked at your research, if you actually did your research, you would find out the information is there. It's being hidden.
Information is there. It's being hidden. The truth is out there. The truth is out there, right? All right. You go get him, Mulder. 10:15. Be right back. Rob Snow Show. This is City News.
So the birth of absinthe was 2002, I think, 2003, and I was working at Urban Bistro, happily, where Allium is now. And then the space where Holland Cafe was came up. It's on the corner of Spencer and Holland. And I spoke to the landlord, and there's a lot of interest from a lot of other people, but he and I just, got along super well, and he put a lot of faith in me. So Carmen Turner is his name. He gave me the lease to the place and really pretty much gave me all the equipment in the place. I was really lucky I've been really lucky with landlords that way, actually, both my current landlord and Carmen Turner. Because if there hadn't been Carmen Turner, there wouldn't have been Absinthe. So we were there for a few years and just sort of outgrew the place. And then now we're here. It's obviously been tough, and it's been tough for everyone. I mean, that's been the big democratic sweep of like in restaurants and the hospitality and the arts that we were talking about earlier. It's like everybody's been impacted pretty much the same. From everybody that I talked to, we're down 75, 80%. We're climbing out now. I think one of the saddest things is like everybody, we went down to 2 employees from 25, and we're now at 4, and we're bringing 2 new people on this week, so we'll be at 6. So it's little steps. So it's been tough. It's I've got the most expensive clubhouse ever here, because some days you come and you don't do any business, but you're here. But I'm grateful for what I do have. I think everybody's optimistic now, not necessarily just about the vaccine, but about like the vaccine, spring, being able to be outside. I think you're going to see a lot of like pop-up things happen in parking lots and on sidewalks and all, and like that, rather than being actually inside somebody's commerce. I think we'd like to take it outside. I know my staff would. My staff like the outdoors now, all of a sudden, all 4 of us. 6 soon. But we'll be doing some business in the patio in the parking lot, and we have a patio out front. And I think I hope other restaurants and stores will do the same. I hope that they take advantage of like the sidewalk and doing sort of, guerrilla marketing and stuff like that, and really shaking it up a bit. You can find us at Absinthe Cafe at 1208 Wellington Street West in Hintonburg, and you can find us online at absinthecafe.ca.
Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
What'd she call it? VAERS? VAERS report? The VAERS report?
VAERS.
Vaccine Adverse Event Report System. Vaccine Adverse Event Report System. Okay. First I've heard of it, to tell you the truth. The first I've heard of it. But it's raw data, right? It's raw data.
That's right.
It's for researchers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And it comes with a huge disclaimer, you said.
There's quite a big disclaimer. Before you're allowed to download the data set, you have to read this thing. Goes on about public can submit reports to the system. While very important in monitoring vaccine safety, reports alone cannot be used to determine if a vaccine caused or contributed to an adverse event or illness.
Well, yeah, exactly.
The report can contain information that is incomplete, inaccurate, coincidental, unverifiable. In large part, the reports are voluntary, which means they are subject to biases. This creates specific limitations on how the data can be used scientifically.
Yeah.
Data from VAERS reports should always be interpreted with these limitations in mind.
In other words, take everything you read here with a grain of salt. Okay, 750-1310, 750-1310. We are off to a rip-roaring start for a Monday morning with this question. Should there be consequences for not getting vaccinated? Should there be consequences for not getting vaccinated? In other words, should the unvaccinated have limits on their freedom? Not being allowed to travel. The same way fully vaccinated people are allowed to travel. Say being denied employment. We'd love to hire you, but you're not vaccinated. Or we'd love to welcome you back to the office, Rob, but you're not fully vaccinated. I'd love to have you in my dining room, but you're not fully vaccinated. I'd love to have you shop in my store, but you're not fully vaccinated. And on and on and on it goes. Okay, 90%. 90% is the goal to get to herd immunity. We keep hearing this more and more. Have to get to 90% of the population fully vaccinated. I wonder if we're going to get to 90% just because of hesitancy and the anti-vaxxer movement. Let's continue with our phone calls. Kate in Ottawa. Kate.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Kate. Should there be consequences for not getting vaccinated?
No, last I heard about a year ago, it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And now it's not without your papers. Man, I did not see that coming. Those who forget history are doomed to repeat it.
What history are we forgetting?
What other part in history did people, certain groups of people, require medical papers, and without them they couldn't move around? Nazi Germany, perhaps?
Oh, you think that we're headed toward?
It could possibly. Look at who's in power. Look at what Trudeau has done during the COVID.
Yeah.
crisis.
I have a lot of criticisms for Trudeau. I'm just not there in likening him to Hitler. Okay, come on. Chris in Brockville. Chris.
Hey, Rob. How are you? Good morning. Absolutely yes. And
yes.
people that are
Okay.
saying
All right.
absolutely no.
Yeah.
Ask them how many people have died in their arms over the last year and a half. Because for me, it's been over 12. Volunteering. Okay.
Wow. 12 people.
So these people are bleeding hearts. And I'll give you an example. Okay. If you want, you have the right. I'm not refusing rights. If you want to drive a car, you have the right to not get a license, and then you're not driving. If you want to drive, you get a license. If you want to travel, you have the right. You get a passport, and then you're allowed to travel in or out of our country.
Right.
If you don't want that right, then you don't have to.
And in fact, there are some countries where they will deny you entry into that country unless you can show them a proof of vaccination against certain infectious diseases.
Absolutely,
right?
yes. I have a passport with over 12 vaccines because I travel globally.
Right.
And yes, I'm not allowed into those countries unless it's up to date.
Yeah.
So this is not a new phenomenon.
No.
We have a global pandemic with people dying in my arms. Okay?
Yeah.
So I'll give you, your point earlier. No shoes, no shirt, no shots, no service. And here's the example. If I have a volatile parent, if I have a wife that's pregnant, and I go to what I believe is a safe location, a hospital, a store, a restaurant, and I have my vaccination, what if somebody who doesn't carries it, transfers it to me, transfers it to the next in line? Whose responsibility is that? Whose guilt is that the transfer occurred to my aging parent or my wife or my newborn child? So, yes, we deserve the right to have safe environments.
Okay.
And if that means having a passport, yes. And in fact, it's not breaking any HIPAA rules. All you need in your driver's license or other government ID is a simple stamp. Yes or no. Are you cleared for COVID? Doesn't matter what vaccine it was. If you have a doctor's approval that you were not going to get a shot for a valid reason,
right,
you're still okay. Then you get a green light.
All right.
And then you're allowed to come in.
Okay, Chris. Thank you.
Tell
Thank you.
the rest they're bleeding hearts.
Bleeding hearts. Okay. Well, I'm going to leave that one alone. Angie in Canada. Angie, you're on City News.
Hi, Rob.
Should there
so
be?
Nice to meet you. Listen to you every day.
You
Love
do. Okay.
So,
God bless you. Should there be consequences for not getting vaccinated? Do I have to duck? Do I have to hide under this desk right now?
Absolutely. Listen, I'm a front-facing PSW.
Okay.
Proud Ottawan. Very proud to be doing my job. And there has to be, there has to be consequences. I am with very vulnerable people. I have, a husband that, has also, health problems that is vulnerable.
Yep.
And there has to be consequences. I loved your last listener. He's bang on. Listen, V, non-V, vaccinated, I have
V and non-V.
flu shot.
Okay.
Rob, I have to get a flu shot every year because I'm going into people's houses.
Sure.
They have to know that they can, come on. I mean, this is a global pandemic. It hit the whole world. And listen, it's not over. Those people who can't get vaccinated, there are some, Rob, that they can't. They just can't handle, I guess, the vaccine, right?
Yep.
And that's, but these people already live a secluded life because of their other problems. But society is changing. It's not like it was in 1971. We have to get on board with this, people.
Okay.
Just please, for my sake, for my family, for my job. And I think jobs like nursing, PSW, police officers, it has to
be mandatory.
It has to be a requirement.
Requirement, yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Angie. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah, very hot today. But it is 4-2. We're asking, should there be consequences for not getting vaccinated? Limits on personal freedom for the unvaccinated. She said they're going to be the V and the non-V. David would love to have you over for dinner, but you're non-V. So you're out. You're out. Helen, Ottawa South. Helen.
Good morning, Rob.
Morning, Helen. Should there be consequences for not getting vaccinated?
So I'm not talking school today.
Okay. Yeah, Helen. Yeah, okay, sure. Okay. What do you think, Helen? Yep.
Well, I think that, my daughter is vaccinated.
Yeah.
My 12-year-old son, however, I'm waiting on this because of the heart issues.
Okay.
And it's actually really scary. And that the vaccine rollout came out so quick. I don't understand how we can't tackle like Ebola or other diseases.
Well, money, for one. Money. $1 billion goes a long way, I guess, in vaccine research. But
okay, but then we're
okay. But let's look at it a different way. Let's look at it a different way. Okay.
Okay.
Well, you know, because you do quite frequently call me about education issues.
Right.
Don't you think your teacher should be vaccinated for your children?
Oh, the teachers, yes.
Don't you think they should, as a requirement, should they be vaccinated? Do you want an unvaccinated teacher teaching your children in an Ottawa school?
No.
Right. In other words, maybe there should be employment restrictions for the unvaccinated. Right. That's
Possibly.
That's the case that will be made.
I don't.
Right?
I don't believe that my child that I.
Okay, you're worried about your 12-year-old, right? You're worried about your 12-year-old. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, I got to stop. It's halftime, and it's pretty hot right now. Okay? I don't know where to put her. Well, she did agree with me on the teacher, so I'm going to 4-3. Okay, 4-3 at halftime. 7 calls. Should there be consequences for the unvaccinated? You don't get vaccinated, there will be limits on your liberty. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
FM and 1310 AM.
This This is Monday, the 12th of July. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, mostly cloudy, 23 degrees. It's 22 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news right now. This just into the city newsroom on COVID-19. 0 deaths from COVID-19 reported today in Ontario and just 114 new cases. That is the smallest daily increase in cases in Ontario since the 1st of September. None of those new cases are in Ottawa nor any of the surrounding counties. So 0 new cases of COVID-19 in our region today. Ottawa's young people have been lining up to get their COVID-19 shots, outpacing the rest of the province. 78% of Ottawa children aged 12 to 17 have had at least one dose of the vaccine. Across the province, that number is just 60%. Toronto police being joined by colleagues from across the country today to lay to rest an officer killed in the line of duty. The funeral for Constable Geoffrey Northrup will be held this afternoon at a stadium in Toronto, but is closed to the public because of the pandemic. A 31-year-old man's been charged with first-degree murder in Northrup's killing. An overnight fire has destroyed a home in Ottawa's rural South End. Happened on Rideau Valley Road between Fennel Lane and Carter Road overnight. A neighbor awoke to hear the crackling flames and called 911. An Ottawa fire investigator is determining the cause. City News Time 10:32. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
We're asking, should there be consequences for their not getting vaccinated? Or should an unvaccinated person enjoy all the same freedoms that a vaccinated person has? You know, be a full participant in society. Because of all this talk about vaccine passports. And I was just looking at the numbers because today we have 114 cases Ontario-wide. That's Ontario-wide. And no deaths reported. And no cases in Ottawa. No cases in Ottawa at all. No cases. Or the Eastern Ontario Health Unit. Or Renfrew. Or Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. Or... do we have Renfrew? Renfrew 0 as well. Is Renfrew a big fat goose egg too? That's good, right? It's good news all around. Now, the vaccination program began on the 15th of December, okay? And in Ontario on the 15th of December, 43 people died. That was the number of deaths reported that day. And it only went up from there because we had a slow beginning to the vaccination program. We had a terrible third wave that peaked in January, with the number of deaths hitting about 100. And then slowly, you could make the case, I think, that as the vaccine rollout picked up steam, the number of deaths declined to the point where it is now down to zero. And it's the same thing with cases. When you look at it, you can just plot it out on a graph. December 15th, Ontario, we had about 2,200 cases, and it only went up from there. In January, 4,200, and then it peaked again in April with almost 4,800 cases. And then we started hitting critical mass with the vaccines, and you see a big drop-off. To now we're down to 114 reported today, and nobody is dead. What do you think caused that? Why? What could be a possible correlation there, do you think, between this dramatic drop in the number of people dying from COVID-19 and the number of people becoming infected with COVID-19? What is really the only thing that has changed? Vaccines, right? And now our goal is 90%. 90%. Can we hit 90%? I don't know. We'll see. But should there be consequences for someone who doesn't get vaccinated against COVID-19, or should they be allowed to enjoy and participate in everything and anything that the fully vaccinated can do under whatever this new normal is going to be? Or should they be limited in what they can do? That's all I'm asking. Should an unvaccinated be able to, unvaccinated person be allowed to shop where you shop? Travel the same way you travel. Employment. What if an employer says, because they will say, you have to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 to come and work for us. or to come back into our building. What would you think of that as a job condition? As a job condition. Leslie in Canada. Good morning, Leslie.
Good morning.
Good morning, Leslie. Should there be consequences for someone who doesn't get vaccinated against COVID-19?
Definitely not. What we have to start realizing here is we keep focusing on COVID and the pandemic, but this has been going on for, even MMR in 2010, 2011, they were fighting the MR if that was causing autism and issues. Now, it is in our rights to question these things. And there's always been religious exemptions, allergy exemptions. And in the end, the argument has always been, if you have your vaccine and you're safe, why are you worried about those that aren't? And you got to count on herd immunity. So I think that we all have a choice. And for whatever reasons that we choose not to, just like a smoking section in a restaurant, remember when they started banning cigarettes? Then they separated it. Smoking section, non-smoking section. Right. So why could we not have a non-vaccinated to keep people safe and social distancing?
The same way, the same way I would imagine the same reason you can't have a smoking section and a non-smoking section. I've heard described smoking sections and non-smoking sections in restaurants it's kind of like having urinating and non-urinating sections in pools. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
Right? Yeah, and I suspect with COVID-19, since the case has been made that it's airborne, it's probably the same thing. Okay.
But the thing is, so why not mandate the flu shots every year as well?
Well, why not mandate the flu shot?
What makes us choose that this is different than mandating a flu shot?
You also said, if you've had the vaccine, you don't have anything to worry about, so why would you force me to get the vaccine? But there will be a certain percentage of the vaccine that of the population, rather, that will never be able to get the vaccine. Maybe they're immunocompromised. Maybe they're undergoing chemotherapy. For example, if you refuse to be vaccinated, you could be putting someone who is undergoing chemotherapy, you could be putting them at risk. It potentially could be a death sentence. How would you feel about that, Leslie? You killed somebody.
Well, you were speaking of the numbers being different, but they're actually pretty much the same.
Oh, really? In April, in the middle of April, Leslie, in the middle of April, we almost have 5,000 cases in the middle of April. Today we have 114. They're not even remotely the same.
What about last summer? Was it the same?
Last summer. Who cares about last summer?
Well,
we are where we are now. We have zero deaths, zero cases. Zero deaths, zero cases. What's the big difference? What's the big difference? All right. I've spent enough time with you. Derek in Ottawa.
Yeah, I think it's a slippery slope. I mean, I'll paint you a scenario. Supposing there's a woman, let's say she's a single mother, has 3 kids, has a heart condition, can't get a vaccine. Now you're saying, vaccine passport, you can't work, go on welfare, send your kids to adoption. I mean,
go on welfare, send your kids to adoption. Okay, go on welfare, send your kids to adoption.
No, but I mean, how would you feel about that? Do you agree with that?
I'm asking the question, should there be consequences for someone who doesn't get vaccinated? Do you think who refuses to get vaccinated? I'm not saying who can't get vaccinated. I'm talking about someone who refuses to get vaccinated. I am saying someone who refuses to get vaccinated.
No, I get you, but what if somebody has certain health conditions?
That's not the same as refusing to get vaccinated, Derek. You're being deliberately obtuse. Rob in St. Isidore. My gosh, people, you're trying my patience this morning. Rob in St. Isidore.
How are you, Mr. Snow?
I'm okay, Rob. Thank you.
I'm terribly sorry. I don't agree with you either.
You don't agree with me either? Okay.
No,
Why not?
I am one of those that refuses. Okay, I will leave the country before I raise my arm up.
Okay, I don't know if you'll be. I don't know if any other country will take you, Rob.
Listen, Rob. Why don't we get everybody that has AIDS or might be in contact with people with AIDS? Why don't we get them to identify themselves as well?
Okay.
Do you understand?
Okay. Sure. That's the other side of it. Sir. That's why we had the bioethicist on our program. Yes, we did.
Where does it stop?
Where does it stop? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Should there be consequences for people who don't get vaccinated against COVID-19, or should they be allowed to do everything and anything that a fully vaccinated person can do? post-pandemic? Or should there be limits on what they can do? Because we are moving in the direction of limits. You will be limited in what you can do, depending on your vaccine status. You might not be allowed into a store. You might not be allowed to travel. It's all but certain you won't be allowed to travel internationally. There are big questions about employment. We're going to have a lawyer on a little later to talk about the legal ins and outs of this. You know, if an employer says you have to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 to work for us or to come back and work in our office, what would you think of that? Maybe it's attached as a job condition. We were down this road in Ontario in the province 5 years ago, by the way. 6 years ago, probably now. It wasn't about COVID-19. At that time, it was about flu shots. You had St. Mike's Hospital, some other hospitals in Toronto, all part of the Toronto Academic Health Science Network. They instituted what became known as a VOM policy, which is vaccinate or mask. Vaccinate or mask. This is long before anyone had even heard of COVID-19. So the administration of the hospitals said, if you want to work here, you either have to get a flu shot or you have to wear a surgical or procedural mask if you're coming into contact with patients. You have to vaccinate or mask. And the Ontario Nurses Association, if you can believe this, okay, I wonder if it has the same opinion now. The ONA filed a grievance, and the union said, you cannot force our members to get flu shots. Now, I thought at that time that was a ridiculous position for a nurses union to take because it's not very pro-public health fighting against getting flu shots for patient-facing employees. But they said it was in their collective agreement that they couldn't be forced to get flu shots. And the union won twice, actually. Twice, an arbitrator ruled that the employer, in this case, some hospitals in Toronto, there was another hospital in Sault Ste. Marie, twice sided with the union. So we have been there before. And I think we're going there again by the sounds of things. Jack in Vanier. Jack.
Yes.
Morning, Jack. Do you think there should be consequences for people who don't get vaccinated?
Yeah, there should.
There should be. Okay.
Because I go to the grocery store, and I was talking to one girl there, and she's pregnant, and she said she's not going to get the needle there for her and her kid.
Okay.
But the kid didn't ask to be born.
Right.
And back then there was no it was normal, you know, and it's just I was going to start to talk to her about it, and I said, Jack, mind your own business. Mind your own business.
Mind your own business.
You know? And that's all I'm going to say on this one.
Right.
But
right.
Let's say liberal.
No, but you're thinking, okay, but you're God bless you. You're working at the grocery store and you're serving other people, but shouldn't it maybe in the interest of public health that person should be vaccinated or not, or serving the public. Yeah.
What was the other one there? Boy, you got me off guard there.
That's okay. All right, going to let you go, Jack. Going to let you go while you collect your thoughts, but I thank you for your call this morning. 750-1310, 750-1310. Should an unvaccinated person be allowed to participate in society to the same degree that a fully vaccinated person can participate in society? The Quebec government has obviously said no. We're going to have a vaccine passport in September. You think it's going to be the only one? Dave in the West End. Dave, good morning. You're on City News.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning, Dave.
Yes, I believe there should be consequences for people who are unvaccinated.
Okay. Such as.
I'm sorry?
Such as, travel.
Travel, work. Anything having to do with anybody else.
Yeah.
This is so we don't overwhelm the medical system.
Okay.
I have a daughter-in-law who is an immunologist, a virologist. She worked on the SARS vaccine. and was able to transfer that knowledge and experience to working on COVID-19 vaccines in her lab. Are there consequences if people don't get vaccinated? Yes, absolutely. People are going to die. People are going to get very sick. We've had a family member who lives in the U.S. and is very anti-vax and very freedom-oriented, also a Southern Republican, but that's different.
Okay.
He and his wife is a Canadian-trained nurse, and they've been down there. She's been down there about 45 years. He got COVID-19.
Right. Okay.
And in the middle of the projectile vomiting and explosive diarrhea event that went on for 6 or 7 days, she asked him, "How's that freedom thing working out for you now, Bob?"
Okay. All right, Dave. Well, I don't know if we needed the whole detail, the whole story, Dave, but I got your point. Okay, I'm going to move along. Thank you. We'll be right back with the final quarter. It has been very hot, and you know what? It is far from unanimous on this one. It's pretty much split right down the middle. Should there be consequences if you don't get vaccinated? You don't get to do what vaccinated people do. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
An old-fashioned traditional grocery store. You're going to find a butcher, okay? You want a steak cut a certain way, you're going to get it. There's flour piled in the warehouse. There's mixers on the floor. There's flour on the floor. The bakery's rented out to Frank Nicolo. It's him and his son come in at night. They mix the dough, they roll the dough, and they bake the dough. It's not the traditional frozen and thaw and put it in the bin, okay? It's made from scratch 7 days a week. It's probably the only bakery left in Ottawa that does that. Then customer service. We're big on that. The cashiers, the deli. You're not. If you ask for something, they're not going to point. It's an aisle number 7. They're going to bring you there. Okay. If you have too much groceries out, we'll take it out to your car. You know what I mean? There's nothing we don't do for our customers, and we evolved around our customers. They would come in and say, can you try getting me this? Can you get me this? So that's how we built the lineup we have now. Okay, so we have a lot of unique items that someone that came over to live in Canada hasn't seen this particular product, but we sourced it and we have it for them. That like something they used to have as a kid. We have a lot of those unique items, a lot. From like all over the world, and we source it through distributors in Montreal and Toronto that bring in the product in bulk, and we piggyback off of them. Probably the largest European deli in Ottawa. We sell lots because people buy lots. It's nothing really complicated about that. We turn over a lot of product. We package it properly. We buy, and we're always consistent. You're always going to buy, Cuddy turkey breast, San Daniel mortadella. You're always going to get the same brands. We don't flip back and forth to save 20 cents. It's always the same brands the last 29 years. Best sandwiches in town. It's simple. It starts off with fresh bread every day baked in the store. Anything that's left over goes to breadcrumbs. So you're getting a fresh bun every day that was baked probably 4 hours before you get here, okay? Not only baked, made, like, mix the flour, roll the dough, proof the bread, and bake the bread, okay? Then all the ingredients come right off the shelves. Your lettuce, your tomatoes, all your condiments, and they're cut up fresh in the deli. Not like the big, corporate restaurant chains that your lettuce comes in shredded in a bag, you open it up and you throw it in the bin. Takes, 2 or 3 days to get here from California. How long is it in the bag? The big difference is like making a sandwich at home, and you don't have to do the work. It's really what the trick is, and using the freshest ingredients possible.
Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Should there be consequences for the unvaccinated? The unvaccinated people who refuse, the people who can't get a vaccine because of a medical condition or whatever. But people who just refuse to get vaccinated, should there be consequences for not getting vaccinated, or should the unvaccinated be able to fully participate in society the way fully vaccinated people can participate in society? Or should it be no vaccine, no service? What do you think? Okay. Picture this. A restaurant, sign at the entrance. It says, you don't come in here unless you can show us proof of vaccination. Would you be okay with that? Or you go to check into a hotel room or rent a car or go to Walmart, go to Costco, whatever, right? You can come up with an endless list of examples. Or should there be consequences for not getting vaccinated? And the consequence is you don't get to fully participate in society the way the fully vaccinated people do. What do you think about it? It has certainly prompted a lot of discussion and response this morning. Irene in Ottawa, what do you think, Irene?
There already is some restrictions, like with the Arrive Canada Act. I think the government is afraid to say because it's all political. Mm-hmm. Myself, I went and got the vaccine because I figured eventually I'm not going to be able to go into places. Right. And I don't want to have a discussion with the anti-vaxxers because I can see what was happening to you today. Right? You can't reason with them. No. Right? You present facts and you just can't reason with them. Okay. And the other thing about work, right? I worked at a hospital at the VG years ago in Halifax, and I was shocked that the nurses didn't have to get the vaccine. But it will be the unions that will be protecting them. That's why the government is not saying you're going to have a passport. They're not, because it's all political and they're looking for votes.
Okay. So what do you think about the idea of needing a passport then? That if you don't get a vaccine, there are going to be restrictions on what you'll be able to do. Do you think that's okay? There should be restrictions on
myself? Yeah. I do.
You do?
Because I already got vaccinated.
Yeah,
I didn't get vaccinated because I really, really wanted to. It was a decision I had to make. Right. I figured, I can't go to Nova Scotia. Right. Unless I'm vaccinated. Yes. I got family in nursing homes. And look at those people in the nursing homes. Yeah. How isolated they've been because people can't go in.
So you were thinking, I won't be able to visit my loved ones. I won't be able to see my family, what have you, right? So
I have no choice, right? But the other thing is, from now on, when I get my hair cut again, I'm going to ask them, are they vaccinated? Because I won't go to them. So that's this is a personal choice that I'm going to be making.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Irene. Thank you. Gotcha. Yep. That's a very popular opinion this morning. I wasn't even necessarily enthused about, rushing out to get the vaccine, but I knew I had to or they wouldn't let me do stuff. Marie in the West End. What do you think, Marie? Should there be consequences?
I agree with you 100%, Rob.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I think that these people that sure, there are people out there, that probably can't get it. But that's what your doctor is for. You go and she either write something, say, I'm sorry, but so-and-so cannot get it. But if they don't have that, they should have to be vaccinated before they do anything else. I'm hoping to go home in a month or a couple of months. I don't want to be on an airplane with people that are not vaccinated or refuse to get vaccinated. I don't think it's fair. Have some consideration for your fellow man, for heaven's sake. And a lot of it is just that they don't want to be told to do something. And yes, Rob, I agree with you 100%. There should be a passport or even the paper I carry in my purse.
I'm not saying there should be. I'm saying there's going to be, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm sorry. I should say that too. I agree with you 100%. There's going to be. Quebec is doing it. I can see Nova Scotia doing this. And if I was the president of another country, no matter where it is, would I want people from Canada coming in that are not vaccinated and the possibility of bringing it to them? No. Come on, folks out there, have some consideration for others. I didn't want to get the needle either, and I had to get 2 of them. I hate needles, but I also want to travel. I want to go see my family. I want to protect my grandchildren, that's right. And I'm very happy to say today, all my family, none of them like needles. everyone that can be vaccinated are now double vaccinated. So
that's good.
I only
Thank
have
you.
2 little ones that are under 12 that can't be right now.
All right.
So I agree with you 100%, Rob. You're right on.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you, Marie. Thank you. Very kind of you to say. Munster. Rob in Munster. You're on City News, Rob. Should there be consequences if you don't get vaccinated?
There should be, like everything else, there should just be they should have to have some kind of proof that they're vaccinated, just like kids that go to school. This is not new. None of this is new. My kids had a little yellow card that had their MMRA, had their diphtheria and tetanus and their boosters. You couldn't go to school without it. They called you if you didn't have it. This is nothing new. We want to travel to Mexico or certain places. We've always had to get a battery of shots before we entered the country. These people that are refusing to get vaccinated, their consequence is they could get very sick and die. That's their consequence.
Okay.
It's not personal with me. It's just get it done.
Just get it done.
So we can get it done so we can all go back to some semblance of normal.
To arguing what we used to argue about, Rob. Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay. We now return you to your regularly scheduled argument. David in Ottawa South.
I'll make it quick. I know we're running short of time.
Yeah.
I'm getting my second shot this evening.
Good for you.
I had it boosted up. I wasn't supposed to go till the end of August. Listen, let's just make a simple comparison. Drinking. Nobody's going to take away my God-given right to have a couple of drinks. But if I choose to have those couple of drinks, they will take away my God-given right to drive my car.
Yes, they will.
For the safety and security of myself and others. And we just draw a simple comparison. If I don't get the shots, then I should not be allowed to harm anybody else. And for those who can't, they can't, and we'll make allowances. One more quick example. I lived in Ireland, and in order to get a blood transfer, if I was sick and needed it, I had to have either been a blood donor or have a note from my doctor saying that I couldn't. And I went to a blood clinic, not because of that, but I just went to a blood clinic because I'm a donor.
Right.
And I gave that, and I had my blood donor's card. And if I was found by the side of the road in an accident, I got my blood transfusion. If I didn't, I had to pay for it. And, you every time I make a choice, you come to a fork in the road. If you turn left in the road, you're not turning right. That's it. When you make a choice, you've made a choice, and other things are off the table then.
Gotcha. Thank you, David. Okay, that's our time. We're right at a time. Look, the response was so overwhelming to this. I think we'll bring this up again tomorrow, okay? During our talk back hour. We'll get back into it tomorrow. Bill, you want to call back tomorrow if you're not busy? If you're not doing anything, Bill? Melissa? If you're not doing anything tomorrow, I'm doing the talk back hour. I'll be here. You can call me back then. On vaccinations, because people will still be getting vaccinated or not tomorrow. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Monday, the 12th of July. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, mostly cloudy, 23 degrees. It's 22 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Family, friends, and fellow officers are preparing to say goodbye today to Toronto Police Constable Geoffrey Northrup. A funeral for the officer killed in the line of duty will take place early this afternoon. Our Caitlin Lee joins us now with details on the procession that's already underway.
Detective Constable Geoffrey Northrup's casket, draped in a Canadian flag, has now left a funeral home in Thornhill on its way to BMO Field. Thousands of officers, meanwhile, are waiting along the lake shore, including police on horseback, awaiting the arrival of this procession. Once it arrives, a police band made up of pipers and drummers from the RCMP, OPP, Peel Police, and more will lead a march to Canada Boulevard and then on to Princess Boulevard. Members from police forces across the country are attending this afternoon's service, which will begin at 1 o'clock. 55-year-old Constable Northrup was killed in the line of duty July 2nd after being struck by a vehicle in an underground parking garage while attempting to arrest a suspect. A 31-year-old man is charged in his murder. I'm Caitlin Lee.
City News Time 11:02. A man has now been charged with first-degree murder in connection with a suspicious death over the weekend near Golden Lake. Police found a 67-year-old man dead at a home at the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan First Nation early Saturday morning. A second man was found at the scene with non-life-threatening injuries and was taken to hospital. 27-year-old Zachary Marquardt from Bonnechere Valley Township has now been arrested and charged with first-degree murder and failure to comply with a probation order. Police have not released the identity of the deceased. Anyone with information about the murder is asked to contact OPP or Crime Stoppers. 0 deaths from COVID-19 reported today in Ontario, and no new cases in Ottawa nor any of the surrounding counties. Ottawa added just 114 new cases today, the smallest daily increase in cases in this province since the 1st of September. The province says Ottawa, Renfrew, Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and the Eastern Ontario health units all had 0 new cases. Updated numbers directly from those health units will come through the afternoon. Nearly 16,000 COVID-19 tests were completed yesterday with a positivity rate of 0.09. The federal government expects to receive 3.7 million more doses of COVID-19 vaccines this week as the country inches closer to hitting the same percentage of fully vaccinated people as the U.S. To date, around 42.7% of eligible Canadians have received 2 doses of vaccine, giving them full protection against COVID-19. The federal government expects another 1.4 million doses of Pfizer to arrive in the next 7 days. It also plans to distribute the 1.5 million doses from Moderna that came in last Friday. The Calgary Stampede welcomes visitors for a 4th day today and says it is putting frontline workers at the front of the line. The Stampede is offering free admission until tomorrow for all frontline and essential workers and their guests. VIPs include first responders, healthcare workers, teachers, retail, grocery, and warehouse workers. Safety measures at the Stampede this year include cutting daily attendance in half. Time now for a look at our local weather forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Sun and cloud and a slight chance of some showers as we work through the day. The high 29 will feel like 33. Showers overnight 19 for the low, and tomorrow and for Wednesday. Showers, scattered thunderstorms, highs about 27. For today, the high 29.
Lots of cloud over Ottawa and the Valley right now. 23 degrees in Ottawa. It's 22 in Smiths Falls. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
It's time to focus on international affairs with Geoffrey Johnston, columnist with the Kingston Whig-Standard. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
And you've been doing a series on the pandemic and its impact on the health and well-being of forcibly displaced people. And this week you write about how they are high risk and low priority. Why do you say that?
First of all, I want to say the talkback was a really good segment. That was I enjoyed listening.
Very, it's hot. It was hot today. Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear people are passionate about the opinions. You know, that's what I like. So
absolutely, and I think it's important. You did a good job of explaining why it was important to get a vaccine. I've had both my doses, and the sooner we do this, the sooner we're going to get back to normal, and the sooner we're going to protect vulnerable people, as you said, people who are maybe having having chemotherapy or somebody with an immune-compromised system. So I think if you're a good citizen, this is something you should really want to do for yourself and your family. And when we're talking about vaccinations, there are, according to the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, there are approximately 82.5 million forcibly displaced people, either refugees or internally displaced people. I mean, the number is actually probably much higher than that because there's a lot of conflict going on.
So these are people fleeing what, Geoffrey? Fleeing persecution, fleeing civil war, fleeing a natural disaster, those kinds of things, right?
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons for people. You know, they're fragile states where the state itself is falling apart.
Yeah.
So, for example, in places like Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh, there are 1 million Rohingya refugees.
Wow.
Because in 2017, there was the government of Myanmar launched a campaign of ethnic cleansing, and they used rape and murder to drive the Rohingya Muslims out of that country, and they fled to a refugee settlement in Bangladesh, Cox's Bazar. 1 million people there. In Uganda, there's a huge refugee settlement. It's not just a camp, it's a settlement, and it's called Bidi Bidi, and you have people who are very vulnerable packed in there. And I recently spoke with Michael Messenger of World Vision Canada, and it's a Christian non-governmental organization that does humanitarian response and longer-term development response, and it focuses on the needs of children, regardless of faith, creed, religion, or gender. They help everybody. And they were telling me that of the countries that host refugees, only 40% have any plans whatsoever to vaccinate forcibly displaced people. And even though some countries may have a plan, the refugees and the internally displaced people are just really an afterthought. So, for example, Bangladesh has come out and said that they are delaying vaccinating those 1 million Rohingya refugees. And I asked Michael Messenger, I said, what would happen if the Delta variant gets into Cox's Bazar? And he is very worried. He said that it would spread very rapidly because people are leaving cheek to jowl. There's poor hygiene in there because, you know, it's a refugee camp. And it would spread. And he said, what would happen in Bangladesh? Because it wouldn't just stay in that camp. It wouldn't just be that 1 million people. He said what happened in India and Brazil and other places where we've seen mass death, that would pale in comparison if it gets into these huge refugee camps. So that's why everybody needs to be vaccinated, whether you're a citizen of that country or you're just living there because you've been forced out of your country. So this is an issue that concerns not just the host countries, but people in Canada as well, because if the virus gets into these places, infects these people, it will mutate, and eventually it will come back and find us, and that would not be good.
You know, plus, I'm also thinking, I'd like you to comment on this. 1 million refugees pour across the border into Bangladesh. Okay, a country probably not well equipped. It's not like Germany, for example. It's probably ill-equipped to deal with 1 million refugees, right? Then then you have another country like you mentioned, Uganda, for example. Same thing. So I'm thinking, and I don't want to make the assumption, but some of these countries are probably struggling to provide an adequate vaccination response for their own citizens, let alone 1 million people who just came across the border. So you have, even within the borders of these countries, you probably have different classes of people who are eligible for whatever vaccine is available, Geoffrey, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the problem is in many of these developing countries, these host countries, the healthcare workers haven't even been vaccinated.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
This should be the basic goal of the international community. That, you know, when COVAX first started to roll out, the international coalition to provide vaccines to low and middle income countries, the goal was to vaccinate the healthcare workers in the low income countries. They wanted to do 10% of their populations right off the bat, and we're nowhere near that. And I see today that the World Health Organization is calling upon Pfizer and Moderna to prioritize ramping up production for low and middle income countries instead of providing booster shots, third shots for people in wealthy countries such as Canada and the United States and, the European Union, because there is talk now that we will need a third shot, which is well and good, but we should start vaccinating the developing world, especially refugee populations, long before we start giving a third shot to people who have already been fully vaccinated in wealthy countries. And I noticed on the weekend as well, Bob Ray, the Canadian ambassador to the United Nations, spoke out and said that, basically what the wealthy countries have done by vaccinating themselves, but leaving the developing world out, is a moral failure. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said. There is a huge gap. And the thing is, what happens in the developing world will not stay in the developing world. We've seen that with the Delta variant and other variants, and we really have to get on this now. It's not too late. It's still July. We could really ramp this up and get a lot of people vaccinated in the developing world if we take action now. So the goal is, in the next few months, according to the World Health Organization, to vaccinate 40% of the people in the developing world. We could do this, but it will take a warlike effort. We've got to be on a war footing, and we can't just think about getting back to normal here. We've got to think about vaccinating people so that the global economy can return to normal, but also so we don't see needless deaths, because the World Health Organization says that conservatively 4 million people have died so far of COVID-19 around the world, but it's probably actually double of that because there isn't proper testing. Even here in Canada, they're saying the actual total is probably double. So we really want to prevent needless death, and we want to return the global economy to normal, and we can't do that if the virus is raging.
Okay. Let me ask you what you think about what you're seeing on the news about Cuba. And taken to the streets in Cuba now.
Yeah, I followed Cuba for a very long time, and I wondered when this was going to happen, because for the longest time, the Castros, the two Castro brothers, ruled that country, and they had a bit of a cult of a personality, and that can go a long way to maintaining social cohesion. But the Castros no longer rule that country, and COVID-19 is actually spreading in that country, and they've only been able to vaccinate a fraction of the population. They've also been experiencing, blackouts and fuel shortages. You can only oppress people for so long before they're going to rebel, and then you have a crisis, a health crisis, and that can actually crystallize people and bring them into the streets. Even though there is, widespread repression in Cuba, and you see that on the weekend a journalist was badly assaulted. He was a photojournalist, and he was beaten up by the regime's thugs. Now, but I will say this, I'm all for freedom, but if Cuba does actually throw off this communist regime that oppresses them, then it's up to the countries that were cheering them on, such as Canada and the United States, to actually step in and help the Cuban people. And part of that would be, and we'll go back to what I was just talking about, would be help vaccinating everybody in that country in a timely fashion, because we can't just say encourage them to throw off, their oppressors and then just ignore them. And then it would also probably require some economic aid and some, teaching them about public administration. But, the history moves on, and oppressors don't rule forever. So let's hope that there is as little bloodshed as possible, but let's hope freedom comes to Cuba.
Okay. Thank you. Always great, Geoffrey.
Thank you, Rob.
Talk to you soon. Yeah. Geoffrey Johnston from the Kingston Whig-Standard. David Sali just ahead. Some of the top business stories this week from the Ottawa Business Journal. This is City News.
Part of the reason I got back into this is because I am creative, and I also wanted to kind of have a fun flair, 50s vibe. All of the boxes are kind of fun names, the colors are fun, the logo is fun, and it's not just the package that I want to bring joy to people's lives, it's also the feeling that they get when they receive it, to know that there's someone that thinks of them and they're missing them and showing that they care when they can't be there. The smallest of the subscription boxes is the red box, the classical box. So you would get 5 to 7 items from the variety of categories. Those do change quarterly. However, with items that are more popular, we'll bring them back as people ask for them, or you could get them as an add-on option. And then those items will be included in the Jazzy box, the same items from the first, although they'll be in a larger size, more quantity, as well as a couple extra items. And then in the largest box, the Doo-Wop Deluxe, which is our most popular, that is a comprehensive offering of all of the other 2 boxes, plus additional. So for example, if you were to get a certain item in the smallest of the boxes, that item would still be offered in the large, but in a bigger size. So you're getting everything bigger, plus an extra few items. The first thing is I look for Canadian suppliers and manufacturers. That is something I'm very proud of. I make sure that the products are safe, that they fit into the packages that we offer, obviously. They have to be the proper size and weight. I have approximately 300 items that we have so far that we can order that basically help make people's lives easier. There's snacks, there's self-care items, there's entertainment, a little bit of everything. And basically I try it and test it, and if it's duly approved, then I include it in our packages. So some of the categories that we have is we offer treats, which is of course everyone likes treats, no matter how old you are. So we have things like nuts, chocolates, different types of snacks, maybe a handmade piece of jewelry. We also include pieces of jewelry as well, occasionally. We also have our pamper items. So your pamper items would include things like your bath soaks, your specialty lotions, things like that. 2 other categories we offer are leisure. Leisure would include things such as puzzles, adult coloring books, paint by numbers, crosswords, word find, Sudoku, if that's how you say it. And we also have items for self-care and health. So masks, sanitizers, sanitizing wipes. They're all natural, non-drying, made with natural ingredients. So they're very good for everyone, especially in this time that we're dealing with.
Opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
A little bit of real estate, a little bit of technology in the news this week from David Sali, who joins us every Monday from the Ottawa Business Journal. Good morning, David. It's great to hear from you again.
You too, Rob.
Well, that name Gillen is a very prominent name when it comes to local commercial real estate, engineering, construction, property development. And there is a building called the Gillen Building, and it's been sold. It has a new owner. Tell us about this deal.
Yeah, Rob. Well, you're right. Gillen is a very well-known name in town here. They've been builders, engineers, landlords for decades. And sort of their, if you want to call it their signature building, where they're headquartered, is at 141 Laurier Avenue West. It's a 12-story building, so just right, not far, a stone's throw really from City Hall, which is on the other side of Elgin. So it's just the Gillen building's just a little bit west of Elgin. Of Elgin there on Laurier. So, and they have sold. They have sold this office tower that they built back in 1964. They've sold it to a company called Jennings Real Estate, which is a pretty new firm. It was only founded 3 years ago, but it's really starting to make a name for itself in town here. This is This brings its portfolio up to 11 buildings now, about 500,000 square feet. So they've started to make their mark in a pretty short period of time. They own some industrial properties in Nepean and Canada. They own a couple of office buildings in the South End on Hunt Club and Walkley Roads. But this is definitely their biggest deal so far. I mean, the Gillen building's it's a Class A building with some real some real marquee tenants in there. You've got the City of Ottawa, the Canadian Home Builders Association, McKay Duff, a well-known accounting firm. Those are just some of the tenants. So, the Jennings brothers, it's actually, the company is founded by a pair of brothers, Ken and Christian Jennings, and they're kind of hoping to use this, as a springboard to getting a little bit, maybe getting their name out there, getting a little bit more traction in the Ottawa market, because they're also, Rob, not just interested in being landlords, they're going to start building themselves. They've got a couple of properties in the downtown core that they're in the planning stages right now to build some multi-residential mixed use properties in downtown and just outside the core. So this is they're really kind of starting really starting to really starting to get the ball.
It's interesting though, because this is a marquee building. I wonder what I don't want to read too much into it, but I mean, Gillen built it, Gillen opened it, Gillen's owned it since 1964, and now they've sold it. And I just wonder if that means anything. Do you read anything more into that? If they don't want to own it, they don't want a 110,000 square foot office tower at Laurier and Elgin. Does that say anything about Laurier and Elgin? Shopify's not far from Laurier and Elgin, right?
So. No, true. It's hard to say. Gillen still has they of course own the Lord Elgin Hotel, which is nearby, and they've got a few other buildings in that area as well. So, I don't know. You wouldn't want. I don't want to speculate. This is something that they're looking at doing, getting rid of some of their portfolio. I'm not sure, but certainly Ken Jennings, when I spoke to, he couldn't have been more bullish on the office market in downtown Ottawa. Feels that it's over the long haul, it's going to be just fine. Right now, obviously, as we know, the vacancy rate has ticked up since the pandemic began, but most people I've talked to in the industry feel like that's a short-term thing. Things are gonna even out over the long haul, as they tend to do in Ottawa, and certainly the Jennings brothers really feel like they've made a solid investment here. So
Jennings, remember that, and it really is Ken Jennings, not the Jeopardy guy.
Not the Jeopardy guy. No.
Gosh, he must get sick of hearing that. Interesting. We've talked about this development before, where the Iranian Cultural Center used to be. It's gone now, long gone now, in Sandy Hill. Big plans for that piece of land. We're talking about 4 high-rises, like 30 stories each. What's the latest on that development for Sandy Hill?
Yeah, well, Rob, as we think we talked back in the winter about this, because originally, Place Doré Real Estate Holdings from Montreal, they filed an application back in January, and in that one, which is at this site, as you say, right near the intersection of Nicholas Street and the Queensway, used to be the home of the Iranian Cultural Center. That closed in 2012. It really was just kind of sitting there. The building was boarded up for a long time before it was torn down, but prime land. So Place Doré out of Montreal has bought the land, and they had planned originally, their proposal called for 4 high-rises of 30 stories each, plus a 9-story building kind of at the north end of the property. Well, they talked to the community, and I guess there were certain concerns from nearby residents about maybe a lack of green space, a lack of amenities, that sort of thing in that proposal. So they've altered it. They have now resubmitted a revised proposal. They've cut the number of buildings down from 5 to 4. They've added more amenity space, and they've kind of rejigged the whole design. They've moved the buildings around so that now the north end of the property has more green space, and there's going to be there's actually now an amphitheater as part of the in the northeastern corner as part of the proposal. To add more sort of community space to it, and so they've moved that building, that 9-story building. They've taken that off the table. Now they're looking at 2 28-story towers and 2 32-story towers, and it also it cuts the number of total units. There were going to be about 1,600 residential units. Now it's down to 1,450 or so.
Yeah. And are they rentals or condos?
Well, that's a good question. The proposal doesn't actually specify.
Okay.
It doesn't say, and I've not been able to get a hold. I've tried several times to contact Place Doré, but they're pretty. They hold the cards close to their vest, so to speak. So they're not saying, but it is, Rob. I mean, I think you get a clue from. It's right near, of course, Ottawa U. There's a number of other rental projects proposed, many of them aimed at students. So it is certainly in kind of an area of the city where rentals are expected to dominate.
Yeah,
so,
the city would like this project. You know, they're so into transit-oriented development, and it's amazing the way things have actually built up around there. Some of the apartment buildings that were there have all been renovated and redone and upgraded. Exactly. And it's really been quite something to see around the Lees LRT station right now. Almost unrecognizable. We only have about a minute left. Tell me about this new startup called Nook. What do they do there?
Yeah, Nook, Rob. So it's a spin-off of Focal Retail, which is a Gatineau company that has an app that helps front office retail staff communicate via instant messages. Well, that company was actually acquired earlier this year, but before that, they started thinking of ways, how can we, sort of help smooth the path for a more hybrid work world. There's got to be a way. We know that not everybody's going to be back in the office. So what can we do? So they brainstormed this idea and came up with this app, which they've called Nook, which basically it can integrate into existing platforms like Slack and other scheduling apps, where it doesn't just show you, a person is in the office. It tells you where they are in the office specifically and what they're doing there. There's a color-coded system, so it'll tell people immediately just by the color whether they are in the mood to have a meeting, whether they don't want to be disturbed, whether they're totally unreachable. All that you can tell that immediately just by looking at their avatar. So they wanted to do this to give a sense so that people don't think, I should come into the office today because I'm going to meet with my boss, only to find when they get there that actually he's now in an all-day meeting, or he's got to work on a project and he doesn't have time to talk to anybody. This way, you get a much better sense of what people are going to be doing and where they're going to be doing it. And it's now available on both Android and iPhone on the App Store. They're expecting this to get a lot of uptake. The basic platform will be free, but then they're going to use a bunch of other analytics tools to help crunch the data to figure out how companies can use their space more efficiently. That's also a big part of it. So they're really looking. They're hoping to make a bit of a splash with this app, Rob.
Great to hear from you. Thank you, David, as always. Great stuff.
Thanks a lot, Rob.
Yeah, from the Ottawa Business Journal. That's David Sali. The news is coming up. This is City News.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, the 12th of July. Good morning. I'm Sarah Buchan. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, we've got some sunny breaks among the clouds. It's warm, 23 degrees and a humidex 28. Here's what's making news this hour. Ottawa Public Health confirms no new cases of COVID-19 in the capital out of 114 new cases of COVID-19 across Ontario. Public Health Ontario reports no new deaths due to the virus. Today's numbers out of nearly 16,000 tests. Elsewhere locally, the province is reporting no new cases for Eastern Ontario or the Renfrew County Health Unit. The Leeds Grenville Lanark Health Unit confirms no new cases in that region. That region has just 2 active cases. The Sûreté de Quebec says the killing of a woman in the Algonquin community of Kitikon-Zibi may be linked to a deadly car crash that occurred about 55 kilometres to the south. Sergeant Mark Tessier says police were called just before midnight to respond to a car crash in Casabajua. On the site, they found a teenager seriously injured following a head-on collision with a semi. Sergeant Tessier says the car involved in the crash was owned by a 44-year-old woman who had been found dead in Kitikon-Zibi minutes before the crash with her body bearing signs of violence. The young driver, who police say left his lane before hitting the truck, moving in the opposite direction, was declared dead in hospital. A funeral procession is underway for a veteran Toronto police officer who died in the line of duty. Officers on foot and on horseback, along with a marching band, are making their way to BMO Field in downtown Toronto, where a funeral will be held for Constable Geoffrey Northrup. Northrup was killed in what investigators have called a deliberate act while he was responding to a report of robbery in a parking lot at Toronto City Hall earlier this month. Police say he died after he was struck by a vehicle. A 31-year-old man has been charged with first-degree murder. I'm Sarah Buchan. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's 11:34. We're in the home stretch of the Rob Snow Show, Sam LaPrade Show. Coincidentally enough, called the Sam LaPrade Show, is coming up right after the noon news here on City News. So we had a very dynamic conversation this morning about vaccine passports, limits on personal freedom for people who refuse to get vaccinated. We talked about some of the ethical, from a medical standpoint, some of the ethical considerations around things like vaccine passports. Let's examine some of the legal implications here with Molly Reynolds, privacy lawyer with Torys LLP in Toronto. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's very nice to hear from you. What are some of the big legal implications, for example, if a business wanted to restrict service based on someone's vaccination status?
Well, across Canada, the privacy regulators have been clear that privacy obligations on businesses are not suspended simply because we are in a public health emergency of various states of severity. So when a business is thinking about asking somebody to prove that they've been vaccinated, or even asking them whether or not they have been vaccinated, that is actually a collection of personal health information. And the business needs to make sure that it's authorized under privacy law to get that information, and in some cases to retain it.
Oh, okay. So is it legal then for I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. Is it legal for let's just use an example, like a restaurant. I walk into a restaurant, they ask me my vaccination status. Are they allowed to do that?
Unfortunately, right now, the answer is it's up to the business, in this case, the restaurant, to determine whether it's legal. So as we know, there has been some guidance in the context of contact tracing that allows restaurants to ask for somebody's phone number or address when they visit in order to contact them in case they were exposed to somebody who had COVID. We don't currently have clear guidance in Ontario or really elsewhere in Canada that says it's legal to ask somebody if they've been vaccinated or legal to ask them to prove that. So it really depends on whether the business can prove that they're dealing, for example, with such a high risk population that the health and safety risk to its employees or to other customers is so high that they can't allow unvaccinated people in. And even if that is the case, it's also up to the business to decide how can it handle this request for vaccine status in as low impact a way from a privacy perspective as possible. And so
and why is that important?
That means not collecting. Well, it's important because what we don't want to do is overreach.
Okay.
So again, you may be asking on the honor system for people who are not vaccinated to use contactless methods and not to come on premises, and not actually asking people to walk around with the slips from their vaccines or to provide copies of that, so that we're minimizing the amount of information we're collecting.
Right. Okay. And in other words, I mean, maybe. So no record is kept on site, for example, at the establishment itself.
That's definitely a better approach, because we have to ask ourselves, why would you need to keep that record?
Why would you need to keep that?
If the purpose is allowing somebody to enter the premises, why do you need to hold on to it?
Yeah. Yeah, because from a privacy point of view, this is something that I would want to know. Just from a privacy point of view is, first of all, are you going to collect and keep that data? How long are you going to collect and keep that data? Are you going to share that data? Who are you going to share it with? All of these things would be concerns from a privacy point of view, right? Don't you think?
Absolutely. And I think when we're thinking of small and medium-sized businesses, they may not be set up to securely store people's personal health information, because that's not what they do in their usual business.
Yeah. And I just think, I mean, maybe it's not comparable at all, but this is such a unique period in time, perhaps, but I just can't picture a business asking a patron about anything else having to do with their health status.
That's absolutely right. And I think what we saw from earlier in the pandemic is there was a lot of discussion about how far can businesses go in asking about COVID symptoms or even taking temperatures. And what we saw was the majority of businesses just settled on honor system questionnaires, effectively saying, if you have any of these COVID symptoms, please stay home, please don't come onto our premises, because it really is a lot less of a burden on them to rely on that honor system and on people being truthful than it is to be in the scenario of collecting health information, as you say, in a really unusual circumstance.
But right now, it seems as though the obligation right now is going to be on the individual establishments because there's not much clarity about it. What could provide clarity? Is it precedent, for example, a case in the courts, a statute, something that goes through the legislature to provide clarity? Molly Reynolds, what could provide some clarity so that everybody's aware? Okay, these are the rules.
Well, I think what we saw from the COVID Alert app is a good example of provincial and federal governments working cooperatively to provide a tool to the public and then consulting with privacy regulators before launching that tool. So very similarly here, what we could hope for, I think, is provincial governments working, with the public health authorities to provide some guidelines or some rules around what types of industries, what types of businesses can request vaccination status or even proof of it, and to give them some guidance on how to make that as minimally invasive as possible. And then for the government to consult with the privacy authorities before issuing that guidance so that businesses aren't worried that by following government guidance, they might still be off privacy rules.
Yeah, okay. Very interesting. I know it says you're a privacy lawyer with Torys. You're not an employment lawyer, but so I don't want to wander too far out of your realm of expertise. But when it comes to this idea, you can't come back to work in our physical office environment unless you've been vaccinated, or you might not get hired unless you're fully vaccinated. Do you see issues arising there?
Absolutely. So as you say, this still has a privacy component because it's personal information of employees and it has an employment component. And in the U.S., we actually have seen much more movement towards requiring employees in certain industries to be vaccinated before they can return. Canada has not gone that far. So right now, there again is no government regulation that says this type of business or this type of industry can make this a requirement of employment. But again, depending on the circumstances, for example, personal service workers in long-term care homes may be subject to greater vaccination requirements or at least questions about vaccine status because of the vulnerable groups they might be working with. If you compare that, for example, to an employer that mostly has office workers and could continue to offer remote work for employees who weren't vaccinated or who didn't want to share their vaccine status, they're not going to have perhaps the same argument to collect this information about their employees.
Thank you so much for your time today. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Molly Reynolds, privacy lawyer, Torys in Toronto. This is the Rob Snow Show. Coming up next, Senator Patrick Brazeau on Indigenous issues in the Canadian context. Right now, inertia. He says there is inertia. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
The food cupboard started about 25 years ago. Again, it was a very small operation in the basement of a church. And we have been expanding to the point where we needed to have a new facility. So in discussion with the city of Ottawa and Jan Harder, the local representative here, we came to this location, which is about 2,000 square feet, located in the Walter Baker Center. We've been here for about 2 years, and it is much better. It gives us a much broader opportunity to serve our clients better. It's a fairly affluent community in Barrhaven, so you wouldn't think that people would really need to have a food bank or a food cupboard. But people sometimes have a temporary loss of their job, maybe new immigrants or refugees to the community. Maybe there's been an injury in the family or something like a pandemic that causes people to run short of food during their monthly requirements. So we offer any clients who come and live in our catchment area the opportunity to pick up an order of food every 3 or 4 weeks. The need varies from time to time. We have expanded our offering to include quite a few perishables, eggs, milk, cheese, yogurt, vegetables, fruit. But people I think know that we need cans of beans and stuff as well too. One thing that we're consistently short of sometimes is personal hygiene products. You go to the grocery store, you buy your toothpaste and you buy your deodorant and shampoo there. People don't automatically think that to donate those kinds of things to a food cupboard. So we end up buying quite a few of those things from time to time. The pandemic has affected us like it has everybody. Initially, we had to stop the grocery store food donations so that we didn't have any risk of contamination and to have a significant number of volunteer work to be done in our facility. We have a storefront, so it's like a mini grocery store where you take a cart and you go around and pick out the things that you want. That doesn't work during the pandemic to maintain social distancing and so on. So what we have now is our clients can come in one at a time, they make an appointment, they stand behind a line, and they direct our volunteer to, I'd like Kellogg's cornflakes rather than Harvest Crunch, to pick the food that they would like off the shelves according to the allocation, depending on the size of their family. And then they take it out, load it into their vehicle or whatever, bring back the cart, we disinfect everything, and prepare for the next client. We are very blessed here in Barrhaven. We're a totally volunteer organization. So if you give a dollar to us, it goes to purchasing food or to provide some service to our clients.
Keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Great pleasure to welcome to the program Senator Patrick Brazeau. Good morning, Senator. Nice to hear from you.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. How are you these days?
I am doing wonderful. One day at a time, but I'm doing
one day at a time. That's good. That's good.
Absolutely.
I was actually, I was driving up through your home turf not that long ago. Drove through Kitigan, Zibi, and Maniwaki. It is really quite. I won't say amazing. It's moving, actually. The number of orange Every Child Matters shirts. I mean, all through Kitigan, Zibi along 105. Senator, it's every driveway. And I guess for someone like me, it really hits home what that means to people there. It's really quite something to see.
Well, it just demonstrates what First Nations people have been saying for decades and decades, which unfortunately fell on deaf ears with respect to some of the things that happened in residential schools. And it's also a demonstration that a lot of the pain, anger, frustration, and suffering that many First Nations people feel, after the discovery of First Nations children's bodies in some of those residential schools.
Yeah. Now, you have released a report, Indigenous Issues in Canada and the Inertia of the Federal Government. What would you say are some of the big things where there's obviously been very little progress, where there's been inertia, where nothing seems to be getting done?
Right. Well, I guess it could be said that, obviously a few things are being done, but nothing in terms of transformative changes to change the relationship or to improve the socioeconomic conditions of First Nations people all across Canada has been done. And my office decided about a year and a half ago to look into the political relationship between First Nations people and the federal Conservatives and the federal Liberals, because they're the only ones who form government federally. And so when the whole SNC Lavalin scandal happened, and what unfortunately happened to the former Justice Minister, Jody Wilson-Raybould, we decided to take a look at this relationship because, obviously there was a lot of hype and there was a lot of people excited about having the first Indigenous person serve as the Justice Minister. But unfortunately, and in my opinion, and having taken some of my experiences, having been formerly part of the Conservative caucus, we decided to look at the relationship. And, one of the biggest takeaways from that report is that there is way too much partisanship played by both federal Conservatives and Liberals on the backs of First Nations people. And I guess if we're going to want progress to be made, it has to stop, because if you look at the records of both these parties in terms of the treatment of First Nations people, they have both failed miserably and continue to do so even in 2021.
Okay. Jody Wilson-Raybould recently announced that she's not seeking re-election. Of course, you know this, but she, in her statement, she almost said it's futile me even being here. She really didn't have much good to say about her experience in Parliament, her ability to make change. That the situation in Parliament has become regressive, she said. Have you felt the same way? Have there been times when you thought, oh, gosh, it's futile. What am I even doing here?
Well, I have asked myself that question many times over the last 11 years. And as a matter of fact, just this past May, I celebrated my quote-unquote 20 years into Indigenous and mainstream politics. And, I can tell you in 20 years that there have been absolutely very little to no discussions on changing this relationship and having a plan going forward. Like, where's the plan that we're going to reduce poverty on reserves? We're going to get zero boiling advisory, or we're going to get clean drinking water onto First Nations communities. Instead, it's just political parties taking it, doing what they can during a mandate, but no political party has actually sat down with First Nations leadership approximately in about 20 years to discuss real transformative changes that is needed. And because from my experience, it doesn't matter which Indian Affairs minister is in place, whether conservative or liberal, they basically have this mandate. And the mandate is not to rock the boat when they come in, it's not to ruffle any feathers, and it's to put out any fire that may arise during their mandate. And if you look at the last 20 years, and it goes even beyond that, could even go up until Confederation, that it's been promises after promises, broken promises, and very little to show for it. And what also needs to be said is that Canada, the government of Canada, almost at every turn will go to court when First Nations claim a right, whether it's land claim, whether it's another right, they are taken to court, and we all know that the government has deep pockets, and they could stretch this out for 10, 15, 20 years, and so very little gets
They'll litigate the issue to death.
And both federal political parties are equally guilty in doing just that. And so, when we hear the opposition right now saying, well, First Nations or the government is not doing this or that, well, neither did the opposition when they were in power. And so it's just these recurring games, and it needs to stop. And I think that whether anybody is an expert in Indigenous issues or not, Indigenous or non-Indigenous, I think that this report that has been conducted by my office is very educative and really sheds light in a nonpartisan way that both federal parties need to do not just much better, but they have to put their words into action.
Yeah, I know. It certainly made headlines, that report, because it calls for reparations, but the thing is, and a lot of people will wonder, well, reparations. I mean, we have this circumstance where either courts or tribunals have actually ordered the government to pay reparations, and the government turns around and fights those rulings and appeals those rulings, right, Senator? So.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I believe in September or in the fall of 2022, the federal government will be in court with First Nations. And essentially what they're saying is that even though serious and unthinkable things may have happened in residential schools, that they are not liable and they're not responsible for any reparations that has to be done. And having gone through my fair share of mental health issues and attempted suicide, there has to be this process of reparation before we get to reconciliation, because reconciliation, if you look at the simple definition, in other words, it's let's become friends again. So all I'm suggesting with this report, and it's all based on these are all, it's not my opinion, not my personal opinion or the opinion of my office. They're really facts, and people could come up with their own conclusions. But geez, even in 2021, we have a federal government that still decides in this country who is First Nation citizen and who is not. There's something incredibly wrong with what is going and how things are working in Ottawa, and I think that it's time for a change, because we have 154 years demonstrating that the Liberal and Conservative way has not worked.
Well, let me ask you about two changes recently. First of all, Mary Simon as Governor General of Canada. Your thoughts on that, please?
Well, again, I think it's very important to have First Nations people named or elected into key positions. Obviously, the more we have, the better it is. But at the same time, we have to be watchful that these positions are not, or these people are not just put into positions by means of symbolism. And so, I say that because at one point when I was part of the Conservative caucus, and having thought about all my experiences since then, I've said it before, I felt like a token Indian. And so, while at the same time I say that it's important to have people in power, but not just as means of symbols, because, this government seems to like symbols, but what is really required is more action.
Yeah, less inertia, right? Less inertia. Yeah.
Maybe put inertia First Nations way and not the other way around.
Yeah. Okay. Senator, I'm glad you're well. I thank you so much for your time. I hope to speak to you again soon.
Well, thank you for your time, fine sir.
Yeah. Senator Patrick Brazeau. And that's it for the Rob Snow Show. So the new news will come up next. Well, the very latest breaking news. In fact, Kitigan Zibi's terrible story developing, and we're learning more about it here at City News, about what happened in Kitigan Zibi, and then a fatal accident along the 105. We'll have the very latest on that story. And then the Sam LaPrade Show. We're back tomorrow right after the 9 o'clock news. This is City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Tune in weekdays starting at 9 on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.